Chapter 180. Although the aura of death was equally strong, he was more willing to choose the aura of life. That lively and passionate life force was what he wanted the most. Othi King stopped after passing through the white fog. He did not set foot on the plants in front of him. He stared at the giant tree in the middle of the lake and smiled. He said calmly, "An old friend has come to visit. I hope Miss Cow is not annoyed." Cow's cold voice came from the treehouse. "When have you ever not annoyed me?" Ripples suddenly appeared on the originally calm and clear lake. A wave surged up from under the tree. Cow, dressed in a long green dress, floated on the surface of the lake under the contrast of the aura of life. She appeared by the side of the lake under the wave and silently floated there. Her eyes were completely focused on Od, as if she didn't notice Nian Bing's appearance. Nian Bing did not say anything. He stood behind Othi King. He was very clear about the difference in strength between him and these true gods. A smart person would not do anything stupid. Othi King looked at Cow. His eyes revealed a warm light. He said, "Miss Cow, Othi King came here because he suddenly sensed Miss Tian Xiang. Perhaps you can give me an explanation." Cow said coldly, "Tian Xiang and I will abide by our agreement. She just left Green Mountain temporarily because of her new training. Why? Do you have any questions?" The smile on Othi King's face did not disappear. "I don't have any questions. It's just that the continent of gods has not been peaceful recently." Miss Tian Xiang's aura suddenly disappeared. This made Othi King a little worried. Cow said indifferently, "Then you can go back. Within 3 days, Tian Xiang will naturally appear. You must have heard about Miorda's bottle of sealing from those true gods. Do you want to interfere again?" Othi King said, "No, of course not. That is the problem of humans. It has little to do with us, as long as what we don't want doesn't happen. What does everything else have to do with me?" Cow looked at Othi King's purple eyes. "Your abilities seem to have improved quite a bit. This body should have completely fused with you. If you're here today to demonstrate to me, you can give it a try." As she spoke, she slowly raised her right hand, and tiny green dots of light gathered at her fingertips. Although the smile on Othi King's face was still there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. A distorted light flickered around him. "Actually, the battle between us doesn't have much meaning. Isn't that right?" Cow said coldly, "If you really think that way, then everything is already over. You came here alone. Aren't you afraid that I'll make you stay?" "I think I still have the ability." Othi King's expression changed slightly. "I just want to ask about Miss Tian Xiang. After all, we are old friends. If Miss Tian Xiang has any difficulties, I'm happy to help." Cow snorted coldly. She said, "Help? You're here to spy on us, aren't you? Do you think we have to make the same choice as you to continue to fight against you?" The green light completely dyed her hand green. Cow's body that was floating in the air suddenly swayed slightly. A faint black shadow appeared behind her without any warning. This black shadow didn't emit any aura, but the clear image made Ling Nian Bing jump in fright. That was clearly Tian Xiang. This time, the smile on Othi King's face finally disappeared. His upper body leaned forward slightly. "In that case, let's meet again next time. I hope that this time, the two ladies will still be the same. Oh right, this little brother is also here to look for you. I don't know what he wants. Othi King won't delay the two of you any longer." Just as he finished speaking, Nian Bing suddenly felt her body tremble. She suddenly left her original position and stood in front of Othi King. At the same time, the blood in her body suddenly stopped flowing. After a moment of stagnation, it broke free from Nian Bing's control and started flowing in the opposite direction. Even her spiritual power was imprisoned in an instant. With a muffled groan, a mouthful of black blood spurted out from Nian Bing's mouth. "You dare!" Cow was furious. The green figure and the black shadow behind him appeared in front of Nian Bing in the blink of an eye. Tian Xiang's shadow instantly slapped out a palm and imprinted it on Nian Bing's chest. The black blood spurting out from his mouth instantly disappeared. Cao directly attacked Othi King, who was behind Nianbing. At this moment, Othi King was even more shocked than the furious Cao. When he broke through Nianbing's spiritual power with his palm, he suddenly felt a strange fluctuation. Immediately after, 7 light shadows appeared behind Nianbing almost simultaneously. Blue, red, green, yellow, silver, white, and black lights flashed and directly cut off his attack on Nianbing. Especially the black shadow, its black blade carried a sharp death aura and directly attacked his body. He was naturally not afraid of this kind of programmed attack, but he was afraid of Cao, who was chasing after him. No matter how conceited he would never dare to attack together with Cao and Tianxiang at the same time. He was afraid of being entangled by the black shadow. The distorted light instantly expanded, and the black light that was attacking him suddenly changed direction. The white fog behind him fluctuated violently and his figure disappeared. At this moment, the space was completely distorted and forcefully blocked Cao's pursuit. Cao's eyes shone with a cold light. A small green arrow floated out from her palm and disappeared into the white fog. Othi King's voice came from outside. The green mountains do not change, and the green water flows forever. The next time we meet, it will be the time for us to decide the victor. I never thought that I would make a mistake. It turns out that you are just an ordinary demigod. Ha ha. The last thing that came was a muffled groan. The distorted space in the life domain disappeared, but Othi King's groan became so weak that it was almost indiscernible. The reverse blood flow stopped again, and should have returned to normal in the next moment. If Nianbing's body was not like that of an ordinary person, he was afraid that this reverse blood flow would have taken his life. He spat out another mouthful of blood and used his spiritual power to control his blood flow again. Only then did he feel a little better. The 7 light shadows did not need to be controlled at all. They had already surrounded him in the center. The 7 divine swords pointed at his body at the same time. 7 types of pure magic entered his body and calmed his injured body. The faint 7-colored light merged with his spiritual power and formed a domain with a diameter of 3 meters. The 7-colored light shone brightly and brought some interesting fluctuations to this domain that was full of life energy. A super-divine tool and a divine tool were 2 completely different concepts. The 7 types of extremely pure magic elements were completely absorbed and transformed by the 7 divine sword. Although there were no magic elements in this life domain, they could still transfer the magic elements they stored into Nianbing's body. This made his magic more active, and combined with his spiritual power to resolve the discomfort in his body. Tianxiang's shadow disappeared. Cao looked coldly at the black blood that Nianbing spat out on the plant. The plant had already withered under the influence of the black blood that carried the aura of death. The area around Nianbing was also turned into flat ground because of the 7 types of magic element. Even the aura of life was blocked outside by the 7-colored light. Even the true God Cao's domain could not hurt Nianbing at all under the effect of the 7 super-divine tools. Cao raised his head. His gaze towards Nianbing became a little complicated, but it quickly returned to normal. Nianbing let out a long breath and recovered. The 7-colored light dimmed at the same time. It did not enter the space ring, but directly entered his body. Nianbing, who had regained consciousness, could not help but feel a little scared. When Othi King attacked him, the 7 super-divine tools in his body neutralized half of the attack. Otherwise, the reverse flow of his blood would have instantly reached a rapid speed. No matter how strong his body was, he would only have the fate of exploding and dying. Nianbing thought of Lada from the dwarf clan. He could not help but sigh secretly. Aunt Lada, you are the ones who saved me. After regaining consciousness, Nianbing immediately saw Cao's unfriendly gaze. He could not help but feel a little embarrassed. Sorry, I did not mean to destroy your domain. Cao snorted coldly. What a god of order! They are getting bolder and bolder. They actually dared to come into my domain and attack. However, you also surprised me. You were able to come out unscathed from Othi King's attack. Other than Tian Xiang and me, you are the first one. Although you relied on external objects, Tian Xiang did not misjudge you. Nian Bing said, "He really is the god of order, Othi King. His ability is very strange. Why does he seem to be able to control my body? He can even control my blood." Cao said, "Among the three of them, Othi King is the strongest. Do you think he is called the god of order for nothing? His strongest ability is to control everything. You can also understand that he is the strongest spatial magician in the world. There is nothing he cannot control. He paid so much attention to you because of your spiritual power. That is why he suddenly attacked you before he left. If it were not for your swords, I am afraid you would already be dead. If it was just me alone, I am not sure I can defeat him. The biggest characteristic of his ability is the change. I am also unable to predict the way he will attack in advance. However, what you saw was not the complete state of the god of order. As the strongest of the three guys, he is also the most insidious. Only when he is together with the god of time can he become the strongest. If it were not for Tian Xiang and I having some special abilities, I am afraid we would have been defeated by the three of them last time." This was the first time that Cao and Yen Bing spoke so much. Ling Yen Bing could not help but feel a little strange. The current Cao seemed to be much more humane and not as unreasonable as before. After thinking about it, Yen Bing said, "He came here to look for you probably because the death aura in Death Waterfall suddenly weakened. However, since he broke the rules of the competition that only happens once in 1,000 years, he should be very confident in his own strength." "Cao, aren't you afraid that the three of them will attack you together? It is better to prepare early." Othi King's attack made Nian Bing trust Cao and Tian Xiang more. Behind the surface gentleness and elegance were despicable actions. This made Nian Bing even more determined to help Cao and Tian Xiang get through this difficult time. Of course, the prerequisite was that Cao was willing to help him recover his life force. Cao shook his head and said, "No, they won't come again, at least not for the time being. Do you think that Tian Xiang and I are so easy to bully? If that was the case, we would have died long ago. After tens of thousands of years of survival, the three of them have become very selfish. Although they are confident that they can defeat the two of us, if they want to kill us, then at least two of the three of them will be buried with us. This is a situation that they definitely do not want to see, so before they have absolute confidence, they will still abide by the oath of the battle that only happens once in 1,000 years. Tian Xiang and I are one, so our situation is different. Even if Tian Xiang and I fight fiercely, we are still one person. Do you know why Othi King came to find me? Because he is afraid. All three of them are afraid." Nian Bing was stunned and said, "Afraid? What are they afraid of?" It is hard for him to understand that as one of the strongest people in the world, the god of order is also afraid of something. A rare smile appeared on Cao's ordinary face. "Because he is afraid that Tian Xiang and I will integrate into one. As early as when the five of us were created, Tian Xiang and I were one level higher than the three of them. The reason why we have always been in a balanced state is that when Tian Xiang and I were created, there was a problem. It can be said that the two of us are only half-finished product. That is why there is a split personality and a split ability. Once we turn from half-finished products into finished products, everything will be completely integrated. Then, it will be the time of destruction for the three of them. That is why they have always been afraid." Nian Bing looked at Cao in surprise and said, "Then after cultivating for so many years, you and Tian Xiang have never thought of a way to integrate into one? There has to be a way." Cao shook his head with a wry smile and said, "We have thought of all kinds of possibilities and have experimented countless times, but we have never succeeded. We are two absolute extremes. How can it be easy to integrate into one? A complete fusion was almost impossible to achieve. At most, we can only achieve a half-integrated state. Only in that state can we compete with the three of them. Nian Bing's eyes lit up and said, "Maybe I can provide you with some help. In the human world, I am a magician with the same origin of ice and fire. Ice and fire are also two extremes, but I have been able to integrate them with my continuous cultivation. In my understanding, no matter what kind of energy in the world, there is something in common. As long as we can find the common point, it is not impossible to integrate. Oh right, there is also the frequency. At a specific frequency, with the common point as the core, the integration is very likely to be completed." After hearing Nian Bing's words, Cao fell into contemplation. After a long time, she suddenly flashed in front of Nian Bing and grabbed his right hand. A burst of life force forcibly entered Nian Bing's body of death, causing him to almost cry out in pain. However, Nian Bing knew that Cao wanted to feel the mystery of the fusion of ice and fire. He forcibly suppressed the discomfort in his body with his spiritual power and opened up everything in his body to let her feel it. The fusion of ice and fire had been completed. The blue and red light in Nian Bing's body fused together, while the other 5 magic elements revolved around him. Feeling the fusion of magic power from Nian Bing, Cao's eyes became brighter and brighter. Obviously, she had figured out something. Although she was not sure, Nian Bing had provided her with a new idea. What is the common point of life and death? Letting go of his hand, Cao retreated to the side. She was constantly pondering. Nian Bing breathed a sigh of relief. Cao's attack was very measured. Her control of life force had reached a miraculous level. It did not cause any harm to him. Cao was thinking, and he was also thinking. Nian Bing was a person who was good at thinking. Whether it was practicing cooking or magic, he would often spend a long time thinking. Those special magic arrays were made for him to use by unraveling the mysteries of those mysteries through constant contemplation. While thinking, he muttered, "Life and death are polar opposites. What do they have in common?" While thinking, time often passed very quickly. Everything in the domain of life was made up of Cao's energy, so he could not feel the passage of time at all. After an unknown amount of time, Cao shook her head in disappointment. "No, it still doesn't work. There is no common point at all. You are ice and fire. From a certain point of view, they are both magic energy. Moreover, they are both based on magic elements and have the aura of life. Ice is cold, stable, and calm life, while fire is intense, passionate, and scorching life. Life and the origin energy are their common point. But life and death are not the same. From the day the world was born, these two types of energy have been in opposition. This opposition is both absolute and relative, no matter from which point of view. They belong to a huge category, and each is the opposite of the other. How can you find a common point? No, it still doesn't work. I can understand the frequency that you're talking about. My half-fusion with the heavenly fragrance and the earthly fragrance is built on the basis of frequency. However, your method of fusing ice and fire from the same origin and using common points is not suitable for us." After saying this, she shook her head in disappointment. Hearing Cao's words, Nian Bing also woke up from her thoughts. What Cao thought of, she also thought of it. Indeed, as Cao said, the opposition between life and death and the opposition between magic elements were completely different. They did not belong to the same level at all. She also could not think of a good way. "Cao, don't be discouraged. Since the person who created you is likely to become the strongest god, then there must be a way. You are right. It is really difficult to reach that level, but I always have a feeling that the two types of energy, life and death, will definitely be able to fuse in a special aura." Cao sighed and said, "In your understanding, maybe we still have a long time, but for us who have lived for 50,000 years, there is not much time left. Before the next battle, if we can't think of a way, the defeat of the battle with the three of them will be ours. Moreover, while we are thinking of a way to improve, they are also constantly working hard. Maybe they can come up with a way to completely destroy us without being destroyed. Tian Xiang and I don't care much about life, but in our subconscious, defeating them is our biggest goal. Looking at Cao's lonely look, Nian Bing suddenly felt a burst of excitement in his heart. He stepped forward and pulled her and said, "Cao, I will definitely help you. I don't know who is right and who is wrong between you. But you helped me to regain my life. I will definitely repay this kindness. As the saying goes, 2 heads are short, but 3 heads are long. I think we will definitely have a way, right?" Holding the hand full of life, Nian Bing's body was very uncomfortable, but his heart was very comfortable. After coming to the godly mainland, he had this kind of feeling for the first time. Although he knew that in terms of strength, he was far inferior to Cao and Tian Xiang, but the impulse in his heart was very strong. Especially when he saw Cao's dull eyes had a little more joy, he was even more sure that his decision was right. Cao gently broke away from Nian Bing's hand, and his face was a little more red. "Thank you. I don't know why, but I suddenly became very confident. Maybe you are right, there will always be a way. You have been in the godly mainland for some time. Let's help you restore your vitality first. Then I will let the dragon god send you and that dwarf back to the Yangon continent." Nian Bing said with some surprise, "You also know about halogen?" Cao smiled indifferently and said, "As long as I want to know, what else do I not know? The dwarves are very bold. The reason why I was willing to help them was that I appreciated the lost empire more. Nothing is absolute. Once you go back, you can do whatever you want. Only by completely opening up your heart can you reach our level. Nian Bing, before helping you restore your vitality, can I ask you to do something?" She actually used a questioning tone. Nian Bing's heart warmed. He knew that Cao had already regarded him as a friend, not an object to be used. He suddenly discovered that the cold and detached upper body was no longer as hateful as before. Compared to Tian Xiang, she was much more sincere. Although it was not obvious, he could clearly feel it. "What request? Tell me. Is it the 100 flowers due? I also want to try it. Of course, I need your help. Making the 100 flowers due is Master Zhaji's wish, and it is also his wish." Cao shook her head, and 2 more red clouds appeared on her face. "You are now dead, and all the flowers here have the aura of life. I am afraid that making the 100 flowers due now will not achieve the best effect. It is not too late to make it after you restore your vitality. What I want you to make is the kind of thing you make for the dwarves called rice. It looks very delicious. I used to follow you into their cave with my divine sense, and the dwarves seemed very happy to see the food you made. Tian Xiang and I have been eating since the day we were born. What we eat is only energy and the most mundane food. After waking up from a deep sleep, we stayed together on this god's land. Although we are called gods, our bodies are still human bodies, and we have not lost our sense of taste. So, I think, I want to eat what you make." Looking at Cao's somewhat shy appearance, Nian Bing could not help but smile. "This is too simple. You know, I have much more confidence in my cooking skills than in magic. Even if you are all gods on this god's land, when it comes to cooking, I am afraid that no one can compare with me. Ah no. I don't have any more ingredients for cooking. After cooking for the dwarves, I left all the materials to them. I can't do anything without the materials. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice." Looking at Cao with some regret, Nian Bing really wanted to satisfy her wish. Moreover, she had not cooked well for a long time. Her desire for cooking was no less than her desire to improve her strength. Cao chuckled. She said, "Have you forgotten? I am a god. After you left the dwarves, I got all the materials you left behind." Nian Bing waved his green sleeves, and all sorts of materials appeared in front of him. These materials had been preserved for a long time, so they weren't that fresh. However, under the effect of Kahl's surging life force, They were able to withstand the pressure. They were all as new as before. Nian Bing looked at Cao in a daze. She suddenly found that Cao's ordinary face looked beautiful in a different way. Cao, I prefer your human-like appearance. It's a pity that Tian Xiang can't appear with you, otherwise, I'll let you taste what I cooked together. While speaking, she released all her cooking utensils from the space ring. Cao smiled and said, How can I not taste it? Although the body is now under my control, her soul still exists. She can also feel what I eat. Hurry up and cook, we have been eating together. Tian Xiang's soul wants me to thank you for remembering her. Nian Bing smiled and said, How can I not remember? She left a deep impression on me. Speaking of this, she couldn't help but remember the deep kiss with Cao and Tian Xiang, and her face couldn't help but blush. What kind of person was Cao? How could he not see the thoughts in Nian Bing's heart? She spat softly and said, Don't have any bad thoughts, hurry up and cook. I'm looking forward to seeing what human culinary skills can make. Thinking of the legendary food that the dwarves said, I'm very interested. Didn't Tian Xiang tell you that, in fact, what we want most is to be able to live the life of an ordinary person? Nian Bing nodded and thought for a moment. Her left hand pointed to the ground, and the earth that had been stirred up by the magic elements suddenly surged out of the ground. A great melody of awakening appeared in Nian Bing's hand. The earth elements stored in the longevity stone continuously seeped into the ground, fusing with the soil. Under the control of Nian Bing's spiritual power, it gradually changed its shape. After a while, an earth-cast stove and a kitchen table appeared in front of her. Looking at the stove and the kitchen table in front of her, Nian Bing's eyes clearly changed. It was a look of extreme desire, calm and full of emotions. She turned her wrist, and the longevity knife returned to her body. She raised her head and said to Cao, There are only ordinary ingredients here. I'll make some simple food for you. If I have the opportunity to go to Yangon in the future, I'll definitely make something better for you to taste. My cooking mainly consists of 5 main methods: grilling, frying, stir-frying, and roasting, and some other auxiliary methods. Today, I'll make 5 dishes for you to taste. I haven't cooked for a long time, and in order to prevent the death aura on my body from affecting the ingredients, I'll make some simple dishes that I'm good at. With a wave of her left hand, a wind rose, and a piece of pork fell in front of Nian Bing. Her hand was wrapped in her spiritual power, and not a trace of death aura leaked out. Looking at the pork in front of her, Nian Bing's eyes suddenly became focused. She raised her right hand and the wind rose. The proud heaven blade floated out of her body and landed in her palm. She pinched the pork with her left hand, and the green light in her right hand gently cut the pork. Immediately, the skin on the edge of the pork was separated from the meat. Nian Bing skillfully pinched the separated pork skin, and the proud heaven blade followed the edge of the pork, completely separating the meat from the skin. She flipped the proud heaven blade in her hand and put the pork aside. Her left hand had already laid the pork skin flat on the chopping board. Although this process sounded cumbersome, it only took a few blinks of an eye. A snow fish was taken out of the ingredients by Nian Bing and landed on the chopping board. Although the snow fish was already dead, under the effect of Cao's life aura, it was as if it had just died. The snow fish was picked up into the air, and wrapped in the wind. This fat, tender, and scaleless fish was finished in a short while. The head, tail, and internal organs were removed, leaving only the fat fish body. With a bang, the snow fish fell, and landed right on the pork skin. Nian Bing had already changed the blade in his hand, and a blue light with a cold aura appeared in his hand. After simply observing the snow fish in front of him, Nian Bing's right hand suddenly turned into an illusion, and the blade disappeared as well. Only the crisp sound of slapping could be heard in the air. The improvement of his body's ability had greatly enhanced Nian Bing's functions in all aspects. Although he had not used these treasured blades to cook for many days, his movements were not rusty at all. The irregular but picturesque blue blade light appeared dense and rhythmic. He did not use the blade to cut the snowfish, but used the back of the blade to continuously hit the snowfish's body. Cao stood in front of Nian Bing. She was indeed powerful, but when it came to cooking, she was like a rolling pin, completely clueless. Looking at the morning dew blade in Nian Bing's hand, and the back of the blade continuously hitting the snowfish's back, gradually turning the snowfish into fish paste, she widened her eyes, and her concentration was no less than Nian Bing's. It was as if she was afraid that she would miss any of his movements. With a crisp sound, the snowfish finally completely turned into fish paste, but the morning dew blade did not have a trace of fish meat on it. The cold light disappeared. Looking at the fish paste in front of him and the pig skin in front of him, Nian Bing smiled and said, "It seems that my cooking skills have not deteriorated." The space ring lit up with a silver light, and a small cloth bag appeared on the kitchen table. Nian Bing stroked his right hand and picked out a medium-sized ghost condor from the cloth bag. With a shake of his wrist, a faint blue light jumped about in Nian Bing's hand like a tiny flame. Chapter 181. His right hand stroked the fish meat with that faint blue light. The ghost eagle slowly moved his right hand and kept drilling in and out of the snowfish. Some shiny things were picked out in the faint blue light. They were the bones and tendons of the snowfish. After a while, his right hand took out the proud heaven blade. He wiped the surface of the pig skin and put the fish meat into the bowl. A faint blue light appeared in his hand, and the big bowl was suddenly covered with a layer of frost. The iron pot was placed on the stove. The ice element condensed in the pot, and the fire element was roasting under the pot. The pot of water was almost boiling in a few breaths. Nian Bing's hands flashed with the light of ice and fire respectively. He was very familiar with the operation. The pig skin was put into the water, and kept boiling in the boiling water. The flame in Nian Bing's hand turned from red to blue, and the temperature kept rising. Under his deliberate control, the pig skin was cooked in a while. The proud heaven blade reached into the pot, and in the light stirring, the wind broke the water, and the pig skin was stirred into pieces. He didn't care about the iron pot anymore, and put it on the stove to dry. He took the prawns from the ingredients and made them into velvet. Every movement of his was like moving clouds and flowing water. It was unusually harmonious and looked very comfortable. There were no flaws. Although he had secretly observed Nian Bing's cooking process, Cao couldn't see what Nian Bing was going to do now. He just watched in surprise. Until now, she was still attracted by the injured man's feet. Her appetite was no different from ordinary people, and the taste of the boiled pig skin didn't arouse her. When the prawns were done, the pig skin soup on the side had cooled down a little. Nian Bing's hand quickly changed a few small bottles, and added a little seasoning into the soup, and stirred it evenly. At the same time, he put the prawns into a bowl. It was also frozen for later use. The carrots and spinach appeared in Nian Bing's hands at the same time. He paused for a moment and took out the fish paste that he had prepared earlier. He divided it into 3 equal portions and placed it in 3 bowls. The spinach and carrots were washed clean under the effect of the ice water. This time, Nian Bing displayed her top-notch knife speed in front of Cao. The spinach was thrown into the air, and was immediately swept up by the green light, as if a small tornado had surrounded it. If it weren't for Cao's extremely strong eyesight, he wouldn't have been able to see what she had done. The spinach was swept up by the green light and gradually turned into extremely small fragments. What was strange was that the juice in the spinach did not spill out at all. It was completely engulfed by the blade light. When the green light disappeared, the spinach had already entered one of the 3 bowls of fish paste. The same thing happened with carrot. The carrot powder went into the other bowl with the fresh red juice. Nian Bing took the pork that he had placed aside earlier. He used the proud heaven blade to cut off a small piece and threw the pork into the air. The wind element wrapped around the pork, preventing it from falling. At the same time, a flame emerged from his left hand. While roasting the pork in the air, Nian Bing occasionally waved the proud heaven blade in his hand, leaving a pattern on the pork. The roasted meat finally gave off a fragrance. In addition to the various seasonings that Nian Bing continuously sprinkled, the fragrance gradually became more and more enticing. Cao had always been very patient, but at this time, he felt somewhat impatient. Looking at the pork rolling in the air being roasted in the constantly changing red and blue flames, he quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He thought to himself, "This thing looks much more delicious than flowers." Nian Bing's dish was extremely complicated to make. Everything that was done now was just the foundation. A small piece of pork didn't need too much time to roast. When the pork reached a level that Nian Bing was satisfied with, his movements changed. The proud heaven blade created countless wind blades that wrapped around the pork. Just like the spinach and carrots before, the pork was turned into minced meat. However, this time, he didn't put the minced meat into the fish paste. Instead, he took out a separate bowl and put it there. After finishing all this, Nian Bing smiled at Cao and said, "The preparation work is done. Bear with it for a while, it will be ready soon." As he said that, his left hand touched the iron pot at the side. The pig skin soup that had already become warm turned into pig skin jelly under the gradual strengthening of the ice element. Nian Bing picked up the iron pot and poured out the pig skin jelly. Under the effect of the proud heaven blade, the pig skin jelly was cut into small pieces and placed to the side. Once again, clear water was added to the iron pot. A red flame rose from the stove under the effect of Nian Bing's magic, slowly heating up the iron pot. At this time, Nian Bing's movements became faster. He first added several different seasonings into the 3 bowls of fish paste. Then, he quickly stirred. The fish paste with spinach and carrots turned red and green respectively. Together with the other bowl of white fish paste, it formed a sparkling and translucent tricolor. Nian Bing sheathed his saber, and his hands began to move magically. When the fish paste was in Nian Bing's hands, it was immediately flattened under the effect of the ice element and wind element. Nian Bing added minced pork into the green fish paste, then kneaded it into a round green fish ball and placed it into the heating iron pot. Next, he used the red fish paste to flatten it and added the shrimp paste to make a red ball. Finally, he added a piece of sliced pig skin jelly into the sole fish paste and placed it into the pot. His movements were extremely fast. Cao saw the red, green, and white fish balls alternately fall into the pot. After a while, the various seasonings that Nian Bing had prepared disappeared. Just when all the ingredients had turned into fish balls, the clear water in the pot finally boiled. Nian Bing's expression became focused. His upper body leaned forward and his right hand took a pair of chopsticks. He inserted them into the center of the water and began to gently stir in the pot. In the boiling clear water, the 3 colors of red, green, and white sparkling fish balls shone with the colors of red, green, and white. With the chopsticks as the center, they quickly circled around. It was the mystic jade hand that could break water and protect face. Although Nian Bing's mystic jade hand wasn't the real deal, its effects weren't inferior at all. At the same time, his other hand carried the aura of the fire element as he pressed it against the side of the pot. He continuously changed the intensity of the flames, causing the clear water in the pot to gradually change. Finally, when the 3 colors of the fish balls became more sparkling, Nian Bing waved his hands repeatedly. Red sole vinegar and various seasonings were added into the pot. In addition, he had already prepared the highest grade chicken broth. A pot of steaming hot meatball soup was ready. The fresh fragrance assailed his nostrils. Cao was absent-minded for a while. He subconsciously walked to the pot and looked at Nian Bing with longing eyes as he poured the meatball soup into a large bowl. He muttered, "Can we eat now?" Nian Bing smiled slightly. He pushed the large bowl in front of Cao. He said, "Miss Cao, please taste my ice and fire glass pearl." The biggest feature of this dish is the combination of various seasonings. There is nothing special in terms of culinary skills. As long as a chef is skilled and meticulous, they can make it. However, I am confident that it is very rare to be able to achieve such a high level of heat and use so many seasonings. I think that the taste of this bowl of ice and fire glazed pearl will satisfy you. You eat first, I will make something else for you. This ice and fire glass pearl was a famous dish that Cha Ji taught to Nian Bing. It was also one of Nian Bing's favorite dishes. The taste was very unique, especially the combination of the snow fish paste and the pig meat jelly. When the fish balls were cooked, the pig meat jelly inside would turn into delicious juice. The aroma of the dish was unparalleled. Although Nian Bing made it sound easy, it wasn't easy for a chef to make this dish. At the very least, it wasn't something that everyone could make. It was very rare to see a chef like Nian Bing who could make it so perfect. Cao looked at the big bowl in front of him and then looked at the 3 pearl-like fish balls in different colors. For a moment, he could not bear to eat. Nian Bing was preparing the next dish. She smiled and said, "Eat quickly. This dish can only be best eaten when it is hot. You can eat slowly and fully experience the various changes in taste. That is the most wonderful feeling. Oh, by the way, be careful when you eat the white fish balls. Don't be scalded by the juice inside." At this moment, he had already forgotten Call's identity. He also forgot that Call's ability didn't allow him to be afraid of heat at all. He was a chef and Call was a mage's taster. The 3 delicious fish balls entered Cow's mouth one after another as she chewed and swallowed slowly. The hundreds of changes in taste suddenly opened up her taste bud. The delicious taste made all the pores on Cow's body open. The surrounding plants grew and fluctuated at a high frequency under the effect of her accelerated release of the breath of life. The light in her eyes became a little hazy. Unknowingly, a black figure appeared behind her. Yes, now she was not the only one eating. At the same time, Amaterasu, who had the breath of death, was eating as well. The 5 dishes were served one by one. Each of them had its own characteristic. Some were fresh, and some were refreshing. It was an eye-opener for Cow. For her, digesting food was a simple matter. When she finished all the food, Nian Bing took a full 2 hours to prepare. "How is it? Is my cooking skills okay?" Nian Bing asked with a smile. She had absolute confidence in her skills. Cow raised her head and looked at Nian Bing with a complicated expression. She whispered, "Do you people in Yangon eat these things every day?" Nian Bing nodded, then shook his head and said, "More accurately speaking, it should be something similar to these. However, it's not easy to taste the delicacies I make. There aren't many chefs like me in the Yangon continent. If you have the chance, go to Yangon. I will get some of the best spices and make you a table of 7 dishes that I am best at. That is what I am best at. My nickname is Ice and Fire Chef. Although I am not the first person to use magic in cooking, I am a pioneer." Cow's face showed a trace of a bitter smile. "Nian Bing, it's over." Nian Bing was stunned. "What? Don't you think my cooking tastes good?" Cow shook her head, and her face showed a trace of a little girl's shyness. "No, I mean, after eating your food, how can I live here in the future? I can't wait to go to Yangon with you now. I don't care about anything and just eat your food every day. How good would that be?" Nian Bing smiled. As a chef, being recognized by diners was the happiest thing. "Of course, when you and Tian Xiang finish all the things, I will cook delicious food for you to taste every day. I always keep my word. So, you have to work hard and strive to defeat those 3 guys as soon as possible. Alas, speaking of which, the most regrettable thing for me is that I can't participate in this year's God of Cookery competition. I'm afraid that the results of the God of Cookery competition have already come out. I don't know who won the final championship. It only happens once every 5 years. I can only wait for the next time." Cow smiled and said, "The food you make is simply too delicious. Although I don't really understand the culinary arts you speak of, the taste and the feeling of eating is absolutely enjoyable. It seems that Tian Xiang and I have lived in vain for the past 50,000 years. We actually didn't know that human food could reach such a level. The food you make is mixed with the aura of magic elements. The various energies in the food are completely brought out by your culinary arts, allowing the food to fully display its vitality. This is simply too wonderful. I would rather starve in the future than eat flowers. Her face showed a trace of longing. Nian Bing understood that at this time, Cao was looking forward to the future life in Yangon. Human life is colorful. Eating is just one aspect of it. If you want to fully experience it, you must become an ordinary person. Otherwise, you will be like now, living in loneliness. For an ordinary person, family, love, and friendship seem to be indispensable. To be honest, although you and Tianxiang both have powerful strength, do you know what happiness is? Happiness. Cao looked at Nian Bing blankly. Obviously, he didn't have a deep understanding of this word. Yes, happiness. Happiness is a feeling. Everyone has a different feeling for Zhao Hongju, but if you can have this feeling, it is definitely the most beautiful thing for human beings. Perhaps when you were eating the food that I made, you felt blissful. You have to gradually experience it yourself. Cao nodded and looked at Nian Bing said with a smile, I can be sure that I feel very happy now. Nian Bing, thank you. Do you know? I am a little reluctant to let you go now. I want you to stay here with Tianxiang and me. Nian Bing shook her head and said, I am sorry. If you treat me as a friend, let me go. In Yangon, there are people waiting for me. I always miss them. What's more, there are too many things I want to do but haven't done. The future is beautiful. Cao, I believe that one day you and Tianxiang will be able to obtain true happiness. Your lives are eternal. This time will not be too long. I firmly believe in this. I am really sorry. When the chapters were divided, the chapter count was heavy. There were 180 chapters. As a result, one chapter was missing when I uploaded it. In order to upload the order, I could only delete the chapter in the morning and upload it again. Friends who have already read the Super Tian Yen Acupoint do not need to subscribe tomorrow morning. I am really sorry. Cao smiled and said, Don't worry, I won't force you. You know, after so many years, this is the first time I've received a favor from someone. I finally understand why those dwarves were so moved after eating your food. These dishes don't just represent food, they represent hope, and at the same time, it's also a kind of happiness. Thank you. I will repay you sooner or later. Although we haven't been together for a long time, you've made me feel like I'm a human, not a god. It feels good to be a human. This kind of relaxed taste should be what Tianxiang and I have been pursuing. Nian Bing smiled and said, That's right. It is good to be a human. There are countless gods on this god's continent, but which one of them is happy? This includes you and the three true gods. However, you are all immortal gods. There will always be a chance to feel happy. Cao said, I have received your favor. There are some things I should tell you. In fact, Tianxiang and I have been showing weakness. Nian Bing was surprised and said, Showing weakness? Could it be that your strength is enough to defeat those three fellows? Cao shook his head and said, No, that's not it. Our strength is indeed not as good as theirs. What I mean by showing weakness is how they feel about us. As the three true gods, they are indeed very powerful. However, they are not based on the human body. There is a certain gap between the human body and that of dragons. Think about it, even dragons will die after 30,000 years. Let alone humans. The current situation on the gods' continent was formed about 20,000 years ago. Maybe it was less than 20,000 years ago. The first batch of gods had already died long ago. Why is this? It is because the limit of the human body is only 10,000 years old. No matter how strong you are, you will die when you are 10,000 years old. Those three guys are no exception. The reason why they are still alive. It is because every 10,000 years they have to change their bodies. They use a special method to transfer their souls and abilities to another perfect body. They will expel the other party's soul, and take over the body for their own use. This process is very dangerous. If they were not strong enough, they would have been in trouble. However, although this method of taking over other people's bodies can maintain their lives, there is also a disadvantage. It is because of the fusion of souls. As a result, their spiritual power is unable to reach the strongest level. They are always behind us in terms of spiritual power. It is just that Tian Xiang and I have never shown that our spiritual power is stronger than theirs. This makes them think that we also need to change our bodies. They are men, so it is much easier for them to find a new body. Tian Xiang and I are more perfect, and we have two souls in one body. It is too difficult to find a new body. Therefore, they think that we are constantly deteriorating. Every 10,000 years, we would deliberately change our appearance to make this illusion more obvious. Therefore, although Tian Xiang and I are no longer as strong as them, we have an advantage in terms of spiritual power. If we want to defeat them, in a sense, we must rely on spiritual power. When I found that your spiritual power has great potential, I chose you to help us. Nian Bing looked at Cao and said, "So what you mean is that you and Tian Xiang don't need to change bodies?" Cao smiled and said, "You are very smart. This is the key to the problem. I've said it before. Tian Xiang and I are a little more advanced than those three. Our souls and bodies haven't completely fused. But we can't be considered as humans anymore. On the surface, there is not much difference between us and them. But in fact, our origin is energy. This human body is just a condensation of various elements. It can change at any time. Otherwise, how can Tian Xiang and I coexist in life and death? Our souls are very special. That is why we can maintain energy and transform it at any time. Therefore, we don't have the problems that they need to face. For so many years, we are still the original gods of emotions." Nian Bing's heart was moved. She smiled and said, "Then your current appearance is definitely not your original appearance. I want to see what you look like. Like Tian Xiang?" Cao nodded gently and said, "The appearance that Tian Xiang let you see is our true appearance. It's just that it is slightly different. What she let you see is just our appearance. It doesn't merge with our aura. Otherwise, the real gods of emotions should look like ordinary humans. They have no aura of life nor aura of death. Although the real situation is that we can't merge these two kinds of energy, we can do it on the surface. Don't forget, we are perfect." Nian Bing smiled and said, "Tian Xiang's appearance is indeed the most beautiful I have ever seen. It's hard for me to imagine that the Creator could give birth to such a beautiful woman." Cao sighed and said, "This is nothing. We are just bodies formed by the perfect genes. We are not born like this. Well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I have eaten the food you made. Now, it's time to restore your ability." With that, she turned around and was about to float towards the small lake. "Wait a minute." Nian Bing suddenly stopped Cao. Cao was stunned. He looked back at Nian Bing and said, "Is there anything else?" The reason why Nian Bing stopped Cao was that she suddenly felt that Cao and Tian Xiang were very pitiful. The smile on her face became even gentler. "Cao, after you help me restore my vitality, I will definitely stay and help you make more 100-flower dew before I leave. Although I have never seen the 100-flower dew, according to my master, the taste of the 100-flower dew is the most wonderful. The taste of every drop is different. After I leave, you and Tian Xiang only need to drink a drop of the 100-flower dew every day. I think you won't miss my cooking too much. This is the only thing I can do for you." Cao looked at Nian Bing. "Aren't you anxious to go back and see your family and friends? Aren't you afraid of wasting time?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "My life was given to me by all of you. What's a little delay in time?" Cao smiled. It was a smile that came from the heart. "Well, we are really friends. Turns out that it feels so good to have friends. If it weren't for the fact that Tian Xiang and I have completely opposite auras, which naturally produces a restraining effect, and we have been living together for so many years, Maybe we can also become good friends. The green sleeve waved. Nian Bing only felt that her body was light. She had been rolled up by Cao's energy. A green energy bridge appeared in the small lake full of vitality. Cao and Nian Bing landed directly on the bridge and floated towards the center of the lake. When they arrived above the lake of life, the feeling was obviously different. The surging vitality in the surroundings constantly stimulated Nian Bing's spiritual power to protect his body. He was shocked to find that the consumption of his spiritual power was actually more than 3 times as much as before. The rich vitality was constantly stimulating his spiritual world, causing him to feel a little dizzy. Cao took Nian Bing to the center of the lake of life before stopping. He turned to Nian Bing. Her expression became serious. This lake of life and the lake of death you saw at Tianxiang's place are the 2 most peculiar places on the God's continent. They condense the purest vitality and death auras on the continent respectively. These 2 pure auras are not very useful to me and Tianxiang. The reason why we have been guarding these 2 types of energy is to find someone who can help us. Your body has been fully baptized by the death aura. Originally, it was an extremely difficult process, but at that time, you were originally a zombie. Coupled with your firm will and strong spiritual power, you actually passed through that difficulty easily. Wait a moment, I will let you enter the spring of life. Because you have been completely changed by the death aura, you will suffer twice as much pain here as you did at the waterfall of death. Don't resist the baptism of the life energy for you. What you have to do is to let go of your body and mind and let the purest life energy wash you. Otherwise, even if you are resurrected, you will lose all senses and become an idiot. I will secretly protect you, but you mainly have to rely on yourself. Do you understand? This is the last checkpoint. As long as you can pass, then, there will be a bright path. What lies before you is a broad path. From now on, your cultivation will become much easier than anyone else's. There will be a day when you can reach our level, or even surpass us. Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, I have already come this far. How can I regret it? Let's start. I am ready. From the moment he left the Yangon continent, his spiritual power was constantly being tempered. His spiritual power and will gradually strengthened, causing his confidence in himself to increase day by day. That confidence came from his own strength. After enduring in the waterfall of death, his mentality had gradually changed. Every time he endured pain, it would bring about an increase in his strength. Now, he was looking forward to it. Cao nodded approvingly. Her big eyes gradually changed. A green light appeared in the depths of her eyes. That was not any negative aura, but the purest life energy. At this moment, in Nian Bing's eyes, Cao was almost the representative of purity. Her almost endless life energy rose. The bridge of life under her feet disappeared. A circle of life energy surrounded Nian Bing's body. The tree in the center of the lake slowly moved under the influence of the life energy. The calm emerald lake began to change. The slight ripples on the surface of the lake gradually became more intense. A green vortex appeared where the giant tree was originally. The life energy spurted out in a pillar shape, and the green light shot straight into the sky. Cao's eyes shone brightly. He shouted softly, "Go!" With a flash of light, Nian Bing's body was thrown into the vortex. Green lightning constantly flashed around Cao's body. Layers of green light constantly rose from the lake of life and condensed towards the vortex. The rotation of the vortex gradually became more intense. The moving tree seemed to be pulled by the vortex and gradually returned to its original position. When it completely covered the vortex, the emerald lake became calm again. However, in the depths of the lake, inside the spring of life, monstrous changes had occurred. Circles of green light in the lake continued to condense towards the center of the spring. Around the tree, a layer of gray color was emitted. Cao looked at the giant tree in front of him and muttered to himself, "Am I asking too much of him?" A black figure floated out from behind him. A gentle voice sounded. No, we are doing this for his own good. Only by relying on his own strength can he better accept the aura of life and death. Cow, I didn't expect Nian Bing to be so smart. He actually thought that death and life can fuse under certain circumstances. Although this isn't correct, it's already close, isn't it? The one who spoke was Tian Xiang. Although her body was in an illusory state and her death energy was not exposed, she really appeared beside Cao. Hearing Tian Xiang's voice, Cao suddenly became a lot colder. What do you think our chances of success are? Tian Xiang shook her head and said, 30%. That's the best I can do. But this is the only feasible method we can think of after so many years. Cao laughed at himself. Nian Bing treats us as friends, but we are using him. If he knows this, I wonder what he will think. Yes, life and death can fuse under certain circumstances. We both know what we have in common, but we hid this crucial point from Nian Bing. Tian Xiang remained silent for a while. Then, she sighed and said, There's nothing we can do about it. This is the only thing we have in common. Don't worry. We won't use this unless we have no other choice. After all, it's very dangerous in itself. If we succeed, we can become the strongest in the world with a level 18. But if we fail, then he won't be the only one who will be destroyed. That day won't come quickly. We brought him life again. This can be considered his sacrifice. Cao sighed and said, The God of Order and the others are not good people. What about us? As the God of emotions with the greatest fluctuation of emotions, what are we? We are just despicable uses. Chapter 182. Tian Xiang's voice became a lot colder. Are you blaming me? Don't forget, you chose all of this, or rather, we chose it together. If you feel guilty, you can give up. We've spent so many years preparing this abundant life and death energy, and finally managed to cultivate Nian Bing. This opportunity won't appear again. Cao didn't change because of Tian Xiang's cold voice and said indifferently, Everything will pass. I just want to be able to eat Nian Bing's food. The human world is so wonderful. After 50,000 years, I really want to live a good life. Tian Xiang softened. Why wouldn't I want to? But as long as those three guys exist, this can only be a dream. Nian Bing will be our last chess piece. If there's a miracle, perhaps we'll never have to use him. You've already told him too many things today. He's a smart person, and I don't want there to be a next time. Otherwise, if he guesses something, all our plans will go down the drain, and we won't have a future. The ordinary-looking Cow and the frosty beautiful Tian Xiang looked at each other, and both of them saw a trace of melancholy in each other's eyes. As they looked at each other, they buried that strange feeling in the bottom of their hearts. The black shadow flickered and merged back into the body of life, and the energy fluctuations in the lake of life became even more intense. Cow's figure flashed, and he floated into the lake of life. The dark space gradually brightened, and everything in the surroundings seemed to be still. No scenery in this still space would fluctuate, even the smallest element. Everything maintained its original appearance, without the slightest change. A rough voice sounded in this still space. Order. You're injured? Destruction. I'm not seriously injured, but their progress is greater than we thought, and they're not that easy to deal with. However, there's one thing I'm sure of. They didn't use the possession technique to change their bodies. This voice was very stable, and it was the God of Order, Othi King. However, his tone now was not as humble as before. A third voice sounded at this time, with a bit of femininity in it. Order, Cao and Tian Xiang have fought with us for so many years. If they were easy to deal with, we would have won long ago. Although they're only half-finished product. But we have to admit, in terms of grade, they're higher than us. Your aura is a bit chaotic, but it's not because of your injury. The God of Order said indifferently, Yes, I met a human at Cow's place, a human who seemed to have a close relationship with her. This human's spiritual powers. And from his aura, I can tell that he doesn't belong to the continent. Surprise came from both the rough and feminine voices at the same time. The god of time said, "Spiritual power? Could this be Kaal's secret weapon against us?" The rough voice representing the god of destruction said, "Then why didn't you just kill that human? With your power, you can't kill Kaal, but can't you kill a human?" The god of order said indifferently, "I made a move. Although Kaal reacted quickly, I felt that the human was not ordinary from the beginning, so I kept close to him. But that human's spiritual power could actually block my energy for a moment, so I couldn't burst out my full power in a hurry. Moreover, he had 7 weapons that could threaten us at the same time. Although I forced him to retreat once, he didn't have a second chance to attack." The god of time said, "When the order attacks, there are no survivors. How confident are you this time?" The god of order said, 70%. Only 70%. Although that human's spiritual power is very strong, his physical strength is very weak. His magic power is barely comparable to a demigod's. Although I didn't use my full power, I'm 70% sure that I can kill him." The god of destruction said, "Then what are you worried about? It's not easy to find a human that suits Kaal and Tianxiang. Since he's dead, it proves that our judgment was correct." Tianxiang's death aura suddenly disappeared to train a helper. "You just happened to go at the right time." The god of order said, "But I don't think it's that simple. This human does have Tianxiang's pure death energy, but his spiritual power is completely out of proportion with his physical strength. This situation is very rare among humans. His Tian and acupoint has been opened to the ultimate level. Other than the 5 of us, this is the first time I've seen a human who can open his Tian and acupoint to such an extent. Moreover, he's very young. I think his spiritual power should have an innate advantage. He's been cultivating since childhood, plus a special environment, so it's possible to achieve this. The ultimate Tian and acupoint? It's true that no god on the continent of gods can achieve this. Let me think. Well, there seems to be a kind of person on the continent of Yangon who is born with much stronger spiritual power than normal people." The god of time's voice had a hint of fertility. The god of order said, "I thought of that too. You're probably talking about those white people. However, white people can't practice magic, but that human has 7 types of magic. This makes me feel very strange. With such strong spiritual power as a foundation, if Kaal and Tianxiang teach him with all their might, he might bring us a lot of trouble in the near future. We might even find a group of people like him. You know that spiritual power is our weak point. We can't allow this to happen." The god of time said coldly, "It seems that we have to make those gods do something." The god of destruction said, "I really want to kill them myself." The god of order said, "Cut off all possible opportunities. Next time, it will be their time of death." At this time, Nian Bing was in a pain he had never experienced before. As soon as he entered the lake of life, he received Kao's notice to withdraw his spiritual power. He only protected the Tian and acupoint. He opened up his body completely. Such a strong aura of life. It was actually the purest congenital aura. This kind of congenital aura that nurtured life was something that every cultivator dreamed of. However, when used on Nian Bing, this most precious thing became the most poisonous poison. His body had absorbed the purest aura of death in the lake of death. Now, he encountered another extreme. Life and death were polar opposites. Almost as soon as he withdrew his spiritual power, he was pushed to the brink of collapse. Under the influence of Pong Da's spiritual aura, all of Nian Bing's nerves became 100 times more sensitive than before. He could clearly feel that the strong aura of life had just entered his body and started to destroy without stopping. Although the levels of life and death were high, this encounter was no different from the collision of ice and fire. It was just that the feeling was more profound. He had experienced similar pain when he cultivated the same origin of ice and fire, but this time, the pain was on a completely different level. Just the high sensitivity of the aura of life almost made Ling Nianbing's confidence collapse. The pain in his body kept tearing at Nianbing's nerve. He could clearly see the situation in his body. At first, his magical power was not affected. The first problem was the surface of his body that was as tough as a dragon, his skin. His skin was stimulated by the faint green light. Gradually, problems started to develop. Since leaving the Lake of Death, Nianbing had always thought that his body's toughness had reached a certain level. Although his spiritual power and the 7 magic dagger played an important role in his escape from the God of Order today, his tough body was also the key to his recovery after the reverse flow of his blood. Otherwise, he would have suffered more than just a light injury. The God of Order would not have thought so highly of him. His skin did not break under the effect of the water of life, and the feeling of constant changes came one after another. Nianbing felt like he was tasting his own ice and fire cuisine. The feeling was different every moment. It was painful to the extreme and itchy to the bottom of his heart. In addition to the numbness that he most hoped for, all kinds of pain constantly appeared on his skin and passed into his spiritual world through his nerve. Even if his spiritual power was strong, it was impossible to make his strange body lose its senses. Nianbing gritted his teeth and endured. Although his belief that supported him was shaken, it quickly recovered. After all, although the pain he had experienced before was not as strong as now, his nerves had been trained to a certain extent. He had been thinking that he had finally gotten the chance to recover after going through so much hardship. How could he give up? In order to return to the Yangon continent, in order to see his parents, lovers, and friends again, he must not give up. Perhaps it was because his body had become unusually sensitive. Nianbing could clearly feel the changes in every part of his body. His skin gradually softened under the constant erosion of the green light spot. It became elastic and completely soft, gently moving with the flow of the water. Suddenly, the pain in his body doubled without warning. Nianbing trembled violently, and his whole body underwent deeper changes in the constant spasms. The green light spots that represented the energy of life paused for a moment, and then chose a reasonable position, not leaving any gaps for Nianbing. They penetrated through the 36 million pores on his body at the same time. His softened skin could not stop such an invasion at all. The unprecedented pain almost tore his soul apart. At the critical moment, Nianbing desperately gathered his spiritual power together, firmly guarding the Tian Yen acupoint and the little bit of clarity in his mind, not letting himself collapse because of the severe pain. He was enduring, watching the green energy enter his body and begin a fierce battle with the death energy. The pure death energy had only fused with Nianbing's body, and was not used by him. At this time, suddenly encountering such a strong and completely opposite energy attack, it naturally fought back. The gray energy spots kept pouring out from his meridians and blood, tangling with the green light spots, attacking each other without giving way. Here, every time Nianbing's body spasmed, it would bring out a gray stream of air. That was not a simple innate qi, but the blood in his body that had already turned gray. Every time the gray blood spurted out and fused with the green life energy, Nianbing felt as if his heart was being bitten by 10,000 ants. His body was already spasming violently, uncontrollably, and he even wanted to die immediately. He had told Cao before, everyone would feel different happiness at different times, and the greatest happiness he could think of now was death. Without experiencing it, one would never understand what was more painful than death, and Nianbing was experiencing it right now. The death energy and life energy did not care whether his body could adapt or not, they were both attacking and destroying each other with all their might. And Nianbing's body was their battlefield. The battlefield gradually became a scene of devastation in the fierce battle. Nianbing watched as his supple meridians were crushed by the two types of energy. He watched as tiny holes appeared on his bones. His body was gradually collapsing, and the surface of his skin was already festering. The gray blood formed an energy circle around his body, trembling and moving continuously. Not to mention controlling his body. Even if he really decided to die, he would not be able to do it. The strength of the death energy and the life energy were on par, and for a while, neither could do anything to the other. Just when Yen Bing thought his body was about to be destroyed, and he was about to leave this world for real, he suddenly felt a familiar coolness in his mouth, because he knew that although he could not speak and could not see, he could feel that the thing in his mouth was the tianxiang fruit that he had eaten once before. This immediately made him feel as if he had entered heaven. A gentle energy penetrated between every element of life and the element of death, forming a fine barrier that separated them. The pain almost disappeared in an instant. A long groan came out from Yen Bing's mouth. In the incomparable pain, he had already forgotten that he was still in the lake. When he opened his mouth, he immediately swallowed a big mouthful of the water of life. As if igniting a fuse, the gentle energy from before actually flowed into the area between the life energy and the death energy. The battle between them appeared again, but this time, it brought Yen Bing twice as much pain as before. A gentle palm was placed on Yen Bing's back, and a mellow breath of life entered his body from his back. All the life energy seemed to have found their leader, and under the influence of this breath of life, they launched a fierce attack on the death energy. In the face of the opponent's tide-like attack, the death energy was finally restrained. The two completely opposite energies, gray and green, gradually separated. The gray energy was inside, and the green energy was on the outside, clearly confronting each other. Every step the green energy took forward was much more difficult than the previous one. The death energy was incomparably strong. They were defending their territory, but the life energy was constantly attacking them. Both of the life energy were one of the purest energies in the world, and at the same time, they were also the highest level of energy. They could not destroy each other, and could only constantly squeeze each other, hoping to expel the other. Due to the addition of the life energy, the death energy in Yen Bing's body gradually fell into a disadvantage. Under the constant pressure and tearing, it retreated little by little, giving up a small part of its territory. The place where Yen Bing's body lost the death energy was immediately occupied by the life energy. At this time, the life energy was no longer the source of Yen Bing's pain. The purest green energy directly merged with Yen Bing's body. His skin almost did not stop recovering. The sparkling and lustrous skin gradually became elastic again. Moreover, this time, Yen Bing's skin had become like a crystal, and the lustrous green light under his skin was constantly flickering. The life energy had won the first battle. However, the real battle had only just begun. Yen Bing didn't even have the time to feel it. The death energy had already launched a fierce counterattack. Because the two energies were separated, Yen Bing could feel the pain in every part of his body lessening a lot. However, at the front line of the battle between the life energy and the death energy, the pain was more intense than before. The spiritual energy in the Tian-Yen acupoint fluctuated violently and trembled. The seven-colored light constantly flashed, cutting off the connection between the spiritual energy and every part of his body. Even so, it still could not stop the pain from entering Yen Bing's mind. It entered the deepest part of his soul. No matter how strong Yen Bing's spiritual energy was, under this situation, it was crumbling bit by bit. The seven-colored starry sky had completely converged at this time, turning into a small vortex of colorful light gathering together. Under the effect of the external pain, just like the death energy, it was also being compressed. The Tian-Yen acupoint was completely closed, and the compressed spiritual energy was constantly fluctuating. Yen Bing felt that if his seven spiritual energies collapsed, he was afraid that he would really be finished. What was Cow doing? Why did she come back to add fuel to the fire? That burst of life energy was clearly emitted by her. Only he had this kind of ability. It surged and transformed his body. Suddenly seeing Kao's naked body, Nian Bing felt that his pain seemed to have lessened a little. Perhaps it was because he was distracted. As soon as he discovered this phenomenon, he immediately focused all of his attention and openly observed Kao's body structure was the same as that of an ordinary woman. However, her body was too perfect. Although Nian Bing had only seen Lan Chen's delicate body before, he didn't observe it so carefully. Out of a man's nature, he couldn't help but secretly think that if he could hold Kao in his arms like last time with Qinshan, what a wonderful thing that would be. His heart became hot, and he forgot to look for the source of the cracking sound, and no longer looked at his own body. He just looked at Kao in silence, thinking of the most common dirty thoughts of men. If Kao now knew that Nian Bing could see her and still had some dirty thoughts in his mind, who knew if he would immediately kill him? Nian Bing didn't know how much time had passed. When he carefully observed every part of Kao's body from head to toe, he gradually recovered. The pain was still there, but it was obviously not as unbearable as before. The core of his seven-colored spiritual ball was his soul. Nian Bing suddenly felt that this bead was the hardest thing in the world and nothing could destroy it. The pain lessened and Nian Bing also relaxed a little. At this time, he looked at his own body. He was surprised to find that the changes in his body were very small. Compared to before, only the death energy was compressed in his chest and abdomen. He lost more territory. His limbs were completely occupied by the breath of life. The familiar red blood and white bones reappeared. Because the death energy was compressed, it was retreating bit by bit, and the direction of the retreat was the magic between his chest and abdomen. Nian Bing secretly said in his heart, "It can't be." It was not easy to recover the magic. If it was completely eroded by the death energy, then what would his magic be like in the future? "Kao, what are you trying to do?" Just as Nian Bing was thinking, the magic in his body had already begun to change. Since recovering his magic in the Lake of Death, Nian Bing's chest and abdomen had regenerated 7 magic balls. Among the 8 balls, each one of them was more solid than before. Although the magic energy was still the same as before, it was easier to control. The absorption of the magic elements in the air was also not much faster than before under the combined effect of his mental strength. Now, the 7 magic balls gradually stopped rotating under the pressure of the death energy in the surroundings and gradually gathered to the center. The ice and fire magic balls of the same origin seemed to be resisting something. The 7 magic balls emitted a layer of faint radiance, just like how the death energy resisted the life energy, resisting the death energy. Unfortunately, how could Nian Bing's magic be compared to the 2 purest forms of energy? In just a short while, the 7 magic balls broke one by one, and the magic energy turned into a liquid state. Under the influence of the death energy, it gradually merged with the gray energy. Nian Bing could not help but feel like crying. After so many years of cultivation, it was not easy for him to achieve what he had now, but his magic disappeared at this time. Even if he could be resurrected, without magic, he could only rely on his mental strength. Could it be that he was going to become a white psychic magician? That was not what he wanted to see. The attack of the life energy became more ferocious. The green light spots had already compressed the death energy from gray to gray, and it was still shrinking in the inner path. Nian Bing sighed. Forget it. Since it was already like this, what else could he do? Since he could not change this fact, he could only accept it. Anyway, Kao and the others still needed his help. There must be a way to help him recover his magic. Thinking of this, he felt a little more relaxed. He no longer looked around and withdrew his consciousness to the vicinity of his mental strength. As soon as he withdrew, Nian Bing found a problem. The heavenly eye acupoint had undergone a huge change. The rainbow energy ball was still in the center of the heavenly eye acupoint, but the heavenly eye acupoint was now only slightly larger than the rainbow energy ball. Furthermore, the brilliant rainbow energy ball was completely surrounded by a layer of golden light. This faint golden light was an energy that Nian Bing had never sensed before. It was an energy that was filled with a domineering aura, and his mental strength was not affected by this energy. Instead, it was constantly communicating with it. Under the influence of that domineering aura, Nian Bing clearly felt that his originally somewhat heterogeneous mental strength had entered a process of gradual purification. The color of the spiritual ball didn't change. However, as the energy was gradually purified, the effects of his spiritual power on his senses were becoming stronger. Nian Bing was shocked to discover that his spiritual power was flowing naturally into his meridians, and he was able to control the death energy that was retreating. What's going on? Didn't his Tian Yen acupoint reach the final realm? Although the influence of the magic was a little special, but the Tian Yen acupoint that had reached the final realm shouldn't have such a huge change. But what was going on with what he was seeing now? Could it be that the Tian Yen acupoint had evolved again? No, that's impossible. Logically speaking, the 7-aperture acupoint would only reach the final realm. After that, the energy would only continue to deepen. Just like what Cao said, the human body had its limit. It was impossible to continuously evolve. But the truth was right in front of him. What should he do? Thinking of this, Nian Bing couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. He didn't know what to do. Thus, he came up with a bold idea. His consciousness once again surged out from his body. This time, his senses were much clearer, as if everything around him was under his control. He accurately controlled his consciousness to come to the front of Cao. Once again, he greedily looked at her perfect body. Resisting the urge to look at the mysterious place below, he used his consciousness to gently touch Cao's mental strength and called out to her. Cao, Cao, can you feel my voice? Chapter 183. The life energy fluctuated violently, and the life energy that was originally in Nian Bing's body suddenly slowed down a bit. Immediately, the death energy counterattacked and reoccupied a small part of the territory. Cao's voice full of disbelief sounded in Nian Bing's mind. You can call out to me? You can still call out to me at this time? No, this is impossible. Nian Bing said a little helplessly. I also think that this is impossible, but the facts are in front of me, and I really did it. You used your life energy to rush into my body. What are you trying to do? The magic power in my body has already been dissolved. My mind seems to have changed a little, and I can control the death energy. What should I do now to help you? Cao was silent, and the life energy no longer attacked inwards, but stopped, maintaining the existing territory. After a long while, Cao's voice sounded again. Nian Bing, you really are a monster. Nian Bing stared blankly, and said with some amusement, It is my honor to be praised by a true god like you. Cao sighed softly and said, I also don't know what happened to you, but if you can control the death energy now, immediately withdraw it, and let my mind occupy more territory. What I want to do is to force the pure death energy in your body together, and compress it, so that it can only be in the Li Zhong acupoint on your chest. In this way, the death energy can be stored there, and it will become the most tightly compressed energy. Your body has just been filled with my life energy, and you have achieved a true rebirth. You don't have to worry about your magic power, it hasn't disappeared, it has only been dissolved in your body. As long as my life energy occupies your body, then I can completely restore it. With such a huge amount of life energy as backing, and with your already open Tian Yen acupoint, I think that it won't take too long for the 7 major acupoints in your body to be opened one by one. It will be very beneficial for your strength to increase. Good. I understand what you mean. Then I will start to withdraw the death energy now. The last condensed one is in the Li Zhong acupoint, right? However, I'm afraid that my spiritual power won't be able to gather the compressed death energy together. It won't be easy to restrain them. Cao said, It doesn't matter. The acupuncture points have the function of restricting energy. As long as I compress them and store them in the Lizhong acupuncture point, I have absolute confidence that they won't launch a counterattack. As for what kind of help the death energy and life energy can bring to you in the future, it will depend on your own efforts. Tianxiang and I were also taking risks. What we have created is another god of emotions. However, you don't have our genes. Therefore, you can only rely on your own ability to develop the relationship between these two types of energy. If one day you can integrate them like how you integrate ice and fire, this is the best help you can give us. Psi, the body of the god of emotions, without the soul and power of the god of emotions, even I don't know if this is the right thing to do. But there is one thing I can be sure of. After doing this, you will become an unpolished gem with the most potential, and your cultivation speed will increase greatly in the future. I'm afraid even we would be surprised. Now you've surprised me. Don't worry, I'm here at the end, so there won't be any adverse effects. Don't worry, we will start now. Nian Bing agreed. With a slight movement of his spiritual power, the death energy was already under his control. Under the effect of his will, he could clearly feel that the death energy was like a mass of water, and it was very difficult to compress it. His spiritual power instantly rose, separating the life energy and death energy from the middle. Immediately, all the pain disappeared again. Nian Bing was overjoyed, and immediately started to control the death energy to shrink it. Even Nian Bing himself didn't expect that his spiritual power would be so strong. The death energy that felt difficult to deal with, under the effect of his spiritual power, actually shrank to half its original size, and a large amount of life energy poured into his chest and abdomen. The first thing that was repaired was his heart. The surging life energy connected the brain and the heart, and finally, the feeling of being a human again appeared. What a wonderful feeling it was! Feeling this, Nian Bing immediately increased his control of the death energy, and desperately squeezed it towards his chest. With the attack of a large amount of life energy on the outside, and Nian Bing's spiritual power on the inside, the pure death energy couldn't do anything, and could only shrink bit by bit. Nian Bing could clearly feel that every time the death energy shrank a little, the resistance he encountered would be a little stronger. However, his spiritual power was like a solid substance, and forcefully controlled the death energy. After all, this death energy was a part of his body, and would always be limited by his body. If the death energy was external, then it wouldn't be something that Nian Bing could control. As the death energy continued to shrink, Cao suddenly moved from behind Nian Bing to in front of him. The hand that was originally pressing on his back was pressed on his chest, and a large amount of life energy directly poured into Nian Bing's Lizhong acupoint. However, it didn't directly attack, but instead turned into a net of life, and wrapped around the death energy that Nian Bing was restraining. If all this was done by Cao, it would take much longer than now, but with Nian Bing's help, the process of shrinking the death energy was greatly reduced. The life energy in the lake of life nourished Nian Bing's body, and Cao fully activated his life energy, and entered Nian Bing's Lizhong acupoint. Not only did he trap the death energy, but at the same time, he pulled it towards the Lizhong acupoint. During the process of pulling, and with Nian Bing's control, it became easier to shrink the death energy. Cao's current actions were equivalent to teaming up with Nian Bing to deal with Tianxiang. In terms of overall energy, he was obviously stronger than Tianxiang. However, when the death energy was compressed to a certain extent, the density of the death energy increased greatly, and it became very difficult to continue shrinking. The death energy that had been compressed into a black color had reached a state of saturation. The energy that Cao transferred into Nian Bing's body through his palm, even with Nian Bing's full effort, was unable to make the death energy ball shrink any further. However, if he wanted to let it enter the Lizhong acupoint, its volume would have to be reduced by 2 times. The stalemate continued. Cao tried several ways to change the impact of the death energy, but to no avail. The death energy in Nian Bing's body had become extremely firm due to the compression. This was the first time she tried to help a human to convert. Everything before was probably just an idea. When she really encountered such trouble in practice, she didn't know what to do. Nian Bing was also condensing the death energy. Her senses were much stronger than Cao's. Her body was full of surging life energy. She had never felt so real as at this moment. The feeling of survival was so wonderful. The surging life energy constantly rushed into her body, and her thoughts spread out outside her body. She could clearly see that the life domain that was originally full of life energy was gradually changing. Although the plants that were full of vitality didn't wither, they didn't have the strong life aura that they used to have. The biggest change was in the lake of life. The clear lake water gradually became a little turbid. The lake of life in the outer circle had lost its life aura, and the huge life energy was constantly pouring into her body. Just as Cao said, in this surging life energy, the magical power that had disappeared before was condensed again. Moreover, it became more condensed than before, and the volume of the magical power was also larger. She couldn't help but want to shout, "I'm alive again, I'm really alive again." Cao communicated with the other soul in her body, Tian Xiang, and made a bold choice. Nian Bing's body recovered all its senses. Just when she was inexplicably excited, Tian Xiang suddenly withdrew her hand from his chest. In the ripples of the water, her perfect body floated forward. Separating the ripples, the two walls wrapped around Nian Bing's waist and back, completely sticking to his strong body. Cold was Nian Bing's first feeling. In an instant, he had already stuck to himself. His mind went blank for a moment. Immediately after, his body suddenly changed. It was the complete opposite of his ice-cold body. In an instant it became hot. Even Nian Bing himself didn't expect that the reaction would become so intense. In fact, this phenomenon wasn't because of the desire in Nian Bing's heart. He had just recovered a huge amount of life energy. Such surging life energy would naturally awaken the most primitive desire in his heart. Moreover, Cao's body was the best in the world. That most perfect body was irresistible to any man. There was a loud bang in his brain. Countless surging life energy surged in from the place where the two bodies joined. That cold and smooth skin and Nian Bing's burning skin came in contact. Under the situation where his senses were strengthened 100 times, Nian Bing only felt his blood boiling, as if it was going to burst out of his body. The male reaction naturally rose, pressing against Cao's abdomen. He, who had just recovered the ability to move, subconsciously hugged Cao, tightly hugging her body in front of him. If it wasn't for the fact that he still had a trace of clarity in his mind, he might have already broken through. The reason why Cao hugged Nian Bing and had no gap between their bodies was because only in this way could she exert her life energy to the extreme, completely pouring it into Nian Bing's body, helping him to resist the final pressure of the death energy. However, although she had lived for 50,000 years, this was the first time in her life that she had such an intimate foundation with a man. When she hugged Nian Bing, she suddenly felt as if she was hugging a huge furnace. A strange feeling that she had never experienced before instantly spread throughout her body. She clearly felt that her life energy seemed to have been stimulated and surged out. Her clear mind immediately fell into a daze, especially when the burning object pressed against her lower abdomen, causing her heart to be in chaos. For a moment, she actually forgot the reason why she hugged Nian Bing. Feeling that strange feeling, her body became even colder. The surrounding water rippled, constantly attacking their bodies. The two of them were in this strange feeling. Their souls gradually merged, and the sound of their heartbeats gradually increased. The life energy was no longer just being transferred from Cao's body into Nian Bing's body. At the same time, it also continuously flowed out from Nian Bing's body, forming a strange cycle between the two of them. The death energy gradually shrank under the effect of the sudden surge of life energy, and could no longer resist. The lust in his body grew stronger and stronger. Nian Bing's instinctive reaction was stimulated by the hundredfold increase in his senses. This intense stimulation was even more unbearable than the intense pain from before. However, even though he knew where to vent, he still restrained himself. He wanted to use his longing for Feng Nu, Ling and Lan Chen to dispel the desire in his heart. However, in this situation, how could he do it? At this time, his heart only had Cao, whom he had carefully observed before. His hands that were hugging her delicate body unconsciously moved up and down. His left hand slowly slid to Cao's beautiful and plump buttocks, and subconsciously drew her lower body closer to him. Only that cold body could weaken his desire a little. No, I can't. Nian Bing's body could no longer coordinate with his will. Although his heart kept stopping himself, his body, which was about to explode, became more and more unable to bear the current situation. Especially when he stroked that delicate and beautiful buttocks, his desire suddenly rose to the peak. Cao's body was gently moved up in the water by him. Her lower body gradually moved forward, gently touching that mysterious triangular area. As a powerful true god, Cao was actually trembling slightly. Her vitality was completely stimulated by this strange feeling. She clearly felt that she was stronger than ever, and the man who was hugging her was so handsome, so perfect. Cao's heart gradually softened. She had forgotten her plan and what she was going to do. Her slender, round, and elastic legs slowly separated. The hand that was hugging Nian Bing's waist slowly moved up and hugged his neck. In the water, the two of them opened their eyes at almost the same time. The voluptuous softness in front of their chests pressed against Nian Bing's firm chest. Her emerald eyes and Nian Bing's eyes, which had returned to azure, stared at each other. Their vitality had become the bridge between them. Cao's beauty was suffocating and holy. Nian Bing could no longer hold back the desire in his heart. He lowered his head, pushed away the water ripples, and gently pressed his lips on her soft red lips. Nian Bing's and scorching heat's two completely different breaths respectively entered their bodies. A comfortable moan sounded in their hearts at the same time. Gently opening the soft lips, Nian Bing found the smooth and fragrant tongue and wantonly sucked it. He held Cao's waist with one hand and just grabbed that white and perfect buttocks with the other. Cao gradually turned from a jerk to a fiery one. The most primitive manifestation of life made her enter an incomparably wonderful realm. Her slender legs slowly moved up the outside of Nian Bing's legs, wrapping around his waist, releasing the high spirits that had been blocking her. With the scorching and firm high spirits constantly touching her softest parts, Cao's heart trembled violently. Nian Bing put both hands on Cao's buttocks and gently lifted them up, making her body more compatible with him. He slowly moved his hands down, firmly holding on to the soft petals, and forced them in little by little. Cao let out a low moan, escaping from Nian Bing's deep kiss. She tightly wrapped her arms around his neck and shoulders, and her nails had already sunk into his firm back muscles. She was afraid, she was nervous, and at the same time she was eager. The soft center slowly moved downwards, and a warm feeling continuously came from the water. At the same time, it also passed into the depths of their souls from where they were joined. Every time he moved forward, he would encounter great resistance. The tight flower stem Ling Nian Bing's desire increased. Suddenly, he encountered a layer of obstruction. He knew from experience that this was Cao's last barrier. He barely restrained himself from stopping. His hands were also trembling, and his life energy was fluctuating violently. He didn't know if he should continue, but the arrow was already on the bow. It was easier said than done not to release it. Raising her head, Cao looked deeply at Nian Bing with a complicated gaze. Suddenly, she bit on Nian Bing's shoulder. Nian Bing's whole body shook. His hands subconsciously went down and his body straightened up. Cao spasmed violently, and the last barrier was finally broken. Nian Bing instantly entered the deepest part of the tight flower stem, and reached the strange and wonderful center of the flower. Life energy completely erupted. Amidst the violent rumbling, Nian Bing's body felt extremely comfortable. Last time, when he was together with Lan Chen, his and Lan Chen's minds were stimulated by the medicinal effects. This time, under the effects of 100 times stronger senses, he felt it so deeply. The moment he broke through the obstruction, his heart was also released. He tightly grasped that soft butt, and merged himself with Cao even more deeply. The green life energy seemed to be burning, pushing the desperately resisting death energy into the Lizhong point in an instant. The reborn body was completely merged with the life energy and revived. Faint green light surrounded Cao and Luan Bing. Amidst the tearing pain in her lower body, Cao was pleasantly surprised to find that her life energy seemed to have broken through a bottleneck that she had longed to break through for a long time. Meanwhile, Nian Bing's body was greedily sucking in her life energy. The increase in life energy made Nian Bing's desire reach its peak. The tightness in her lower body became even more comfortable with the lubrication produced by the continuous stimulation. Amidst the rippling water, she began to gently move. With every movement, she would send him to the peak of bliss. Her movements gradually became stronger, and every impact was so firm and persistent. The increase in movement made Nian Bing's feelings even more profound. The feeling of bliss made her desire to explore the final peak even more. Pain continuously transmitted into Cao's soul. However, as the pain gradually became more intense, waves of numbness continuously transmitted. Especially when that high peak touched her delicate center of the flower, this feeling became even more intense. Every time Nian Bing sent her a message, she would spasm. The mouth-biting Nian Bing slowly loosened, and a moving moan transmitted into Nian Bing's ears along with the water. After receiving such sincere encouragement, Nian Bing's movements became even faster. As the speed increased, her movements became bigger and bigger, causing the surrounding water to continuously ripple. The life energy in the lake of life surged into their bodies. Not only was Nian Bing nourished, even Cao was benefiting. Nian Bing didn't know how long he had been going on for. He only felt that a very long time had passed. Every movement would push the feeling of bliss up a bit, and Cao also gradually began to match his movement. It was precisely in this situation that the two gradually became more familiar with each other. Cao's body also turned from cold to hot under Nian Bing's lead. That feeling was so wonderful, so moving. Finally, when the bliss reached its peak, the quantitative change triggered a qualitative change, and an indescribable happiness instantly erupted in the two's bodies. The seed of life, in the constant outburst, made Nian Bing and Cao have a trace of understanding of the source of life, especially Cao. In this case, as the god of life, her experience was much more profound than Nian Bing's. The surging life energy completely poured into the two's bodies at the last moment. Cao originally thought that the life energy he would lose by helping Nian Bing not only didn't decrease, but also became more abundant than before. The peak of bliss began to decline. Nian Bing tightly hugged Cao, enjoying the aftertaste of bliss. Suddenly, he clearly felt the life energy in his body tremble violently, crazily rushing to the lower part of his body, as if it had found a huge vent. Just as he woke up from his desire, Cao suddenly raised her head, her hands pressed hard on his shoulders, and her delicate body rose from the lake, directly rushing upwards. The place where the two joined separated, immediately bringing up a liquid of the source of life in the water. Cao diagonally rushed out of the water, her perfect delicate body floating in the air in silence, the water droplets on her body constantly sliding down. She was surprised to find that the domain of life, that should have become deathly still due to the loss of life energy, had actually become full of vitality again. The lake of life was still as emerald as before, and the ripples she brought up when she came out of the water were gradually spreading into the distance. The plants on the shore were still the same as before, and the flowers were in full bloom, seeming to be more vibrant than before. Cao's body rose, while Nian Bing's body sank to the bottom of the lake. He was very clear why Cao had suddenly left him. If she hadn't done so, he was afraid that his life energy would have been directly sucked into her body. Ling Nian Bing felt as if he was immersed in a warm sea full of life. Traces of tiredness entered his brain, and his body and mind relaxed. He no longer had to gather his mental strength to resist. Closing his eyes, he felt the constant impact of the waves on his body, comfortably and relaxed, falling asleep. After the mutual exchange of life energy and death energy, although his body had been completely transformed, it still needed time to nourish and repair. The death energy on his chest had already condensed into a black pearl. Silence stayed in the Lijiang acupoint, surrounded by a circle of emerald green light. His whole body was constantly flashing, and the 7 colors of light alternated. The black light on his chest and the 7 colors between his eyebrows were the most obvious, especially the 7 colors surrounded by the golden light, which seemed to represent the birth of a new domain. Cao floated in the air, absent-mindedly looking at everything around her, and didn't utter a word for a long time. Even she herself didn't know why such a situation had happened, but she didn't regret it at all. That unprecedented experience was deeply imprinted in her memory. Her beautiful face was constantly changing all kinds of expressions. She sniffed and smiled. All kinds of different moods were constantly changing. Is it beautiful? A black figure quietly separated from her body, and the energy body Tian Xiang floated beside her in silence. Didn't you also feel it? Why are you asking me? Cao's cold voice had a little more gentleness. Tian Xiang smiled faintly and said, "That's right. I also felt it. It turns out that humans can actually produce such a wonderful sense of beauty. Unfortunately, I'm not you. After all, we are 2 souls, and what I can feel is only a third of what you feel. Do you know? Right now, I'm very eager to do it with Nian Bing again when I'm in control of my body, and to properly experience that wonderful feeling. I think you should have received a lot of benefits just now." Cao smiled faintly and said, "Do you think that's important?" Tian Xiang smiled and said, "Yes. Of course it's not important. The experience and feelings you received are the most wonderful thing." Cao chuckled and said, "Even I didn't expect that such a situation would occur. Not only did my life force not weaken, it actually strengthened a lot. It also made me understand the source of a human's life force. Tell me, should I blame him or thank him? He's our first man." Tian Xiang shook her head and said, "No, he's only your first man, but not mine." Cao looked at Tian Xiang with a smile and said, "If you want it, it won't be difficult. When he wakes up, I think he won't reject you." Tian Xiang looked at Cao. "Won't reject him? No, you're wrong. Didn't you realize that before the 2 of you merged, Nian Bing went through a fierce psychological struggle in his heart? If it wasn't for the 100 times senses that made him unable to bear the stimulation in all aspects, he might not have done anything with you. I can feel that he already has a lover in his heart. The union between the 2 of you is only the union of desire, and not the love that humans call love." Cao frowned and said, "Tian Xiang, you're jealous." Tian Xiang smiled evilly and said, "Maybe. Why didn't I think that I could be like this with him? Cao, did you notice? After you merged with him, the compatibility between us also increased a little. Although it's only a small part, it's something that we've been pursuing for many years but have never been able to obtain." Cao laughed in spite of himself and said, "Do you think that we should have more sexual relations with him? If that can stop hurting him, I'm willing to give it a try." Tian Xiang looked deeply at Cao and said in a deep voice, "You're soft-hearted. He's your first man. I think it's easy for you to have feelings for him. However, please don't forget our purpose. I won't do anything with him. You're no longer awake, so I have to stay awake. He's our last reliance. Unless we have other ways, he won't change this." Cao wanted to say something, but looking at Tian Xiang's firm eyes, he didn't say anything. He sighed softly, and his gaze fell on the clear lake. The storm of ice and snow is my most beautiful vow. A beautiful voice sounded in the valley. Under the cluster of ice and snow, a blue figure slowly rose. There wasn't a trace of human aura, and the pure ice element covered everything around. A pair of huge blue wings spread out on both sides, making the blue figure float in the air in silence. Two figures, one red and one purple, floated in the air. The purple figure was also set off by the ice and snow, while the red figure lightly flapped a pair of wings that seemed to be formed by flames, and arrived in front of the blue figure in the blink of an eye. The blue figure looked at them and sighed faintly. It's been a year and a half. The red figure flew in front of her. Yes, it's been a year and a half. How is he? We've been thinking about him, and he's also been thinking about us, isn't that right? The purple figure's voice was gentle with a bit of sadness. It's been a year and a half. I miss him so much. Why don't you ask if he's doing well? Three different graceful figures. They were Feng Nu, Long Ling, and Lan Chen. The three women looked at each other in the air. With the help of the 7 Dragon Kings, a year and a half had passed. Even the 7 Dragon Kings were surprised by their growth. What supported them was always the motivation in their hearts. Feng Nu smiled as she caught Long Ling's slender waist. Sister, you can't always let yourself be sad. Didn't I tell you before that we have to have faith in him? For us, he will definitely come back. Long Ling's eyes widened slightly, and she said, Sister, you don't have to comfort me. I know that you miss him no less than I do. Feng Nu glanced at Lan Chen beside her. Half a year ago, we should have gone to the Ice God Tower, but then we went into seclusion and delayed the time until now. If the three of us join forces, we have at least a 60% chance of success. Chen, can you let go of everything in the past? Lan Chen lightly shook her head and said, Sister, I will never forget the kindness of raising me. After all, she is my master. I will definitely repay her kindness, but we can't wait any longer. In a while, let's go back and say goodbye to the 7 Dragon Kings, and then set off. Perhaps after we fulfill Nian Bing's wish, he will also come back? After a year and a half of waiting, the 3 girls were actually already somewhat desperate. A year and a half had passed, and there was no news of Nian Bing at all. They completely vented all kinds of negative emotions in their hearts through cultivation. In order to lessen the pain of missing her, they could only train hard with all their might. They had asked the 7 Dragon Kings more than once about the method to go to the continent of God, but they were all stopped by the 7 Dragon Kings. The last time the Dragon God took Nian Bing to the continent of God, he had already taken a great risk, and also consumed a lot of energy. The same thing couldn't be done again. Moreover, the 7 Dragon Kings had contacted the Dragon God once to ask about Nian Bing's situation, but the Dragon King told them that Nian Bing was still in treatment, and he didn't know the specific situation. Without Cao's permission, the Dragon God couldn't enter the domain of the God of Life. Chapter 184. If it wasn't for the fact that they hadn't received news of Nian Bing's death, the 3 girls would have broken down long ago. They didn't want to reveal too much sadness in their hearts, fearing that it would affect the other 2 girls. But in secret they had shed countless tears. Especially the simple-minded Long Ling. In terms of determination, she was far inferior to Feng Nu and Lan Chen. Every day after training, Long Ling would secretly find a place to silently cry Nian Bing's name. Feng Nu nodded and said, All right, let's go back now. Long Ling suddenly raised her head and said, Sister Feng Nu, I want to ask the 7th Dragon Kings to summon the Dragon God again and ask about Nian Bing's current situation. Maybe there's already news about Nian Bing? What if he comes back and can't find us? Feng Nu looked at the pleading look in Long Ling's eyes and nodded gently. Let's go back and try. Jing Heir and Brother Garamandes should be back in 2 days. They've been back in Ice Snow City for a month. Although Xuejing had come to Ice Snow Mountain with Garamandes and their identities had been confirmed, she still missed her father and would occasionally go back to see Xueji. Long Ling also wanted to go back, but she was afraid that if she saw her father, he would never be able to come back. Nianbing had helped Xue Ji fulfill his wish, and now the Ice Moon Empire's Magician Guild's position in the Ice Moon Empire was very different from before. Even their headquarters had been moved to Ice Snow City, and their power had greatly increased. Long Ling nodded and said, "We have to wait for Silence to come back before we leave. I still want her to ask about father's situation for me." The three girls moved lightly, and under the two elements of ice and fire, they slowly moved towards the Dragon King's cave. Landing at the entrance of the cave, the three girls happened to meet the Ice Dragon King Sasaris. Sasaris looked at the three women and smiled. "You're back. Your realms have increased again. I really envy you humans for your speed of progress. If I could be like you humans and open my acupoints, my ability wouldn't have stagnated." No matter what kind of divine dragon it was, after reaching the Dragon King's realm, if one wanted to advance further, they could only cultivate the Dragon God's heart mantra. Otherwise, this bottleneck would be extremely difficult to break through. Feng Nu smiled and said, "Then we still have to thank you for your help, elder sister." As the Ice Dragon King, Sasaris was of great help to Lan Chun and Long Ling, who both cultivated ice magic. Sasaris glanced at Long Ling and smiled. "Ling, you're thinking of your Nianbing again, aren't you? You little girl, don't cry so much. My heart aches just looking at you." Although her face was still cold, her occasional smile was very charming. Suddenly, the Ice Dragon King Sasaris's expression changed. "Not good, something's wrong." At the same time, Feng Nu, Long Ling, and Lan Chun also felt a huge amount of energy coming from the Dragon Cave. This energy was very strange, and even with their Tian Yen acupoints, they couldn't determine the true attribute of this energy. The four girls looked at each other and floated into the cave at the same time. Just as they rushed into the cave, they felt a huge amount of life force coming towards them. The speed at which they bounced out was twice as fast as the speed at which they rushed in. The other 5 Dragon King were also bounced out together with them. No one knew what happened. The 6 Dragon Kings looked at each other in dismay, their faces showing shock. They were all experts of the 12th step, plus Feng Nu's group of 3 who were at the 11th step. With such a powerful force, even the Dragon God couldn't force them out of the cave in an instant. Not to mention, ever since Dark Dragon King Kagiastus started cultivating the Dragon God Heart Sutra, his strength took a new leap, and was already close to the 13th step. Earth Dragon King Fatso said in shock, "What's going on? Boss, don't tell me there's something in your cave?" Dark Dragon King Kagiastus shook his head and said with a frown, "Impossible. When Demanteti and I first stayed here, we carefully explored the surroundings. This energy is too strange. What a powerful life force, what a powerful energy, it appeared without any warning. Did you see anything just now?" Demanteti said, "I am Light Dragon King, my life force is the strongest. Just now I seem to have seen a green hexagram. Not only did it have life force, it also seemed to have some spatial energy." Space Dragon King Kadiris nodded and said, "I also felt it, but this is the first time I felt this kind of spatial energy. It's too strange, what exactly is it? However, I can feel that this life force doesn't have any malice. It doesn't seem to be attacking us." Feng Nu sucked in a breath of cold air. If it's not an attack then, they all thought of the same problem. Facing this kind of situation, no one could say anything. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Everyone didn't rashly rush into the cave again. The 6th Dragon King formed a semicircle, and 6 colored radiances flashed from their bodies at the same time. They kept increasing their energy, ready to react at any time. Feng Nu protected Lan Chun and Long Ling behind her, and relied on her fire-fighting aura to fill the gap left by Fire Dragon King Garamandes. Although she was a bit weaker, her phoenix flames weren't inferior to the flames of dragons. Combined with the power of the 6 Dragon Kings, they formed a 7-elemental barrier, sealing the cave entrance. Right at this moment, a lazy voice echoed in everyone's mind. What? My friends, my wives, are you going to welcome my return like this? A figure slowly walked out of the cave. He didn't walk fast, but each step was firm and powerful. He had a slender figure, a golden magic robe, and long golden hair draped over his back. His azure eyes were as bright as the stars, and a faint seven-colored radiance flickered behind him, setting off his tall figure. His handsome face revealed a sunny smile, and his star-like eyes were covered with a faint layer of mist. His affectionate gaze made everyone's heart tremble. He had returned. Nian Bing. These two words were a name that Feng knew and the other two yearned for day and night. After a year and a half, he had finally returned. The life force surrounding his body was so real. Feng Nu could clearly feel that the current Nian Bing was just like the first time she saw him. Yes, he had returned. The red, blue, and purple figures almost simultaneously rushed in front of Nian Bing. They opened their arms. Nian Bing hugged the three women into his arms. At this moment there was no need to say anything, because no words could express their longing for each other. Silence. Time passed as the sixth Dragon King smiled. Ever since Miordas reported the loss of the sealing bottle, they had never been as happy as they were now. The three women's hard wait had finally paid off. Their man had returned. The dragon's friend had returned. There was a low cough. It caused a ripple in the quiet and warm air. A short figure walked out from behind Nian Bing. Cough, cough, Nian Bing. Aren't you going to introduce me? Nian Bing woke up from the joy of reunion. Looking at the three women who were weeping, he hurriedly said, Come, let me introduce you. This is my good brother, Halogen of the dwarf clan. Halogen. These three are my confidants, my wives, and also your sister-in-law. At this moment, he hurriedly introduced the three women and the sixth Dragon King to the dwarf clan warrior who had returned with him. The three women didn't object to Nian Bing's introduction. The wait wasn't in vain. They waited for their most beloved man to return, and also waited for Nian Bing's promise. There was no grand ceremony, but from this moment on, they all knew that they completely belonged to this man. Kagiosis walked in front of Nian Bing and grabbed his shoulder. The Dark Dragon King, who had always been calm, was trembling with excitement. Good, you're finally back. Nian Bing, you were gone for too long this time. Nian Bing smiled and said, Yes, I'm finally back. Even I didn't expect that I would be gone for so long. Are you all right? Is everyone all right? Kagiosis smiled and nodded. We're all right. Everything is the same as before. It's just that your three wives have been waiting for a long time. You have to comfort them properly. Nian Bing took a deep look at the three women. Feng Nu looked at him with a gentle gaze, Lan Chen's eyes were filled with passion, and Long Ling's shyness was filled with excitement. Their expressions were the same. Nian Bing took a deep look at the three women. Feng Nu looked at him with a gentle gaze, Lan Chen's eyes were filled with passion, and Long Ling's shyness was filled with excitement. Their expressions were the same, but their thoughts were the same. He felt so blessed to have such wives. Space Dragon King Kadiris came over. He laughed mischievously and said, Yes, Nian Bing, if you didn't come back, your three wives would have turned into slugs. Who are you calling a slug? The three women shouted coquettishly at the same time, scaring Kadiris and making him jump back a step. That funny and awkward look immediately made everyone burst into laughter. Demanteti said, Nian Bing, was it Dragon God Sama who sent you back? But what's with the life aura just now? Nian Bing said with a smile, No, it's not that. It was a friend of mine from the continent of gods who sent us back. Demanteti hesitated for a moment before saying, Then Kaka, Nian Bing smiled faintly, and the space between his eyebrows shone brightly. A golden halo floated out along with the colorful light. A loud dragon roar rolled out, and a light projection was projected from the space between his eyebrows. Suddenly, another energy form of Nian Bing appeared in front of him. It's just that this Nian Bing wasn't wearing clothes, and his whole body was covered with a layer of golden gray scales. Mom, I'm back too. It was Kaka's voice. Although the appearance was the same, the voice and aura were completely different. Demanteti didn't have time to be surprised. She took a step forward and hugged her son into her arms. Kaka. A warm atmosphere spread in front of the dragon cave, and the temperature in the cold mountain range didn't seem to be that low. Halogen looked at this reunion scene and couldn't help but lower his head somewhat sadly. He thought of his own clansmen and thought of his mother. Nian Bing slept in the Lake of Life for half a year, and only then did he truly complete the process of life reconstruction. In half a year, Tianxiang had already restored the Lake of Death. When Nian Bing woke up, she taught him a lot of theoretical knowledge together with Cao. Nian Bing's strength had been greatly improved, and he had finally entered the threshold of the 12th order. Cao had told him that he was now like a huge treasure trove. As long as he kept digging, his future would be limitless. As for the scene in the lake, they didn't mention it. Nian Bing once asked about it with some shame, but Cao told him that it was just a coincidence. After staying on the continent of gods for half a year, no matter what the reason was, Nian Bing, while constantly learning theoretical knowledge, wholeheartedly brewed the 100 flowers due for Cao and Tianxiang. He only brought back a very small part for himself. After that, Cao informed the dragon god that Nian Bing had been resurrected, and the dragon god returned Nian Bing to him. Under the influence of Cao's huge strength, Nian Bing was sent back to the Yangon continent. After rejoicing, everyone returned to the dragon cave. Katerios couldn't help but ask about Nian Bing's situation on the continent of gods. As for Cao's matter, Nian Bing didn't say much, nor did he give a perfunctory answer. He just shook his head to Katerios's question. Some things couldn't be said casually. After all, it involved too much. As for Halogen, he only briefly introduced him, saying that Halogen was his friend, and that it was the dragon god who asked him to bring Halogen to the Yangon continent. Katerios used to be a part of the Lost Continent, so he had a lot of feelings for the races of the Lost Continent. Naturally, he wouldn't say much. Kaka, what about you? What did you and the dragon god learn? Why was Nian Bing able to separate you from his body? Demanteti was most concerned about her son. Kaka smiled and said, Mom, I learned a lot of things from the dragon god, and I finally figured out the attribute of my ability. With the help of the dragon god, I discovered that my ability belongs to a kind of form called non-attribute. It's a very special ability. I can use this ability to display any kind of magic effect through the instant conversion of energy. In other words, I can be regarded as a dragon of any kind. It's just that I can't use two kinds of abilities at the same time. This is a bit worse than Nian Bing's fusion magic. Nian Bing said with a smile, Are you still not satisfied? Although you can't use multiple kinds of abilities at the same time, you can be proficient in each kind. This is an advantage that I don't have. Moreover, I always feel that your non-attribute ability is special. As long as you work hard to cultivate the Dragon King Heart Sutra, you will definitely become a powerful Dragon King in the future. Hasn't your Dragon God Heart Sutra already reached the 4th level? During this period of time, my spiritual force has made some progress. Kaka's body is now formed by my spiritual force combined with magical element. In fact, his soul is still in my body and can't be separated. It's just that he shows his current appearance through remote control. However, being able to reach this step, I think it shouldn't take too long to separate his soul and reconstruct his body. This is also inseparable from Kaka's own effort. Compared to when he left, he is now much more powerful. Kaka put on a smug look and said with a smile, Of course, who am I? I'm the successor of the dragon god. Kadiri said in a bad mood, You don't learn anything good, but you want to learn from that guy Kadiri's. You have to remember that you can be where you are today because of the tolerance of the dragon god. Only by working harder and doing your best for us dragons in the future can you repay the kindness of the dragon god. Kaka stuck out his tongue and said, I know, father. Kadiri said discontentedly, I say, boss, can you not involve me in your lesson? Who did I provoke? Kadiri's ignored Kadiri's, stood up and said, let's go outside and exercise. Brother Daoluan, you also come with me, I will take you to see the scenery of the Yangon continent. Dragon King and Kaka walked out of the cave with the dwarf warrior Daoluan. Kadiri's meaning was very simple. He wanted to leave the space in the cave to Nian Bing and his 3 lovers. The pain of the 3 women's longing was seen by the Dragon King and the others. Nian Bing finally returned, so how could they delay the reunion time of the 4 people? Nian Bing and the 3 women were left. At this time, he didn't know what to say. He just looked at them in silence, and tenderness surged in his heart. He slowly pulled the right hand of the 3 women. His left hand was at the bottom, and his right hand was at the top, feeling the excited heartbeat of the 3 women. His heart was intoxicated. The first to speak was Feng Nu. Nian Bing, you are back, I want to go. She seemed to have spent a lot of effort to say this sentence. As soon as her voice fell, she lowered her head sadly. Nian Bing was anxious, Feng Nu. What's wrong with you? Don't you believe in my love for you? Or you still don't forgive me? The Wind Girl shook her head and said, the past is the past, but I have to go now. During the time you left, there have been earth-shaking changes in the continent. Nian Bing sighed. As long as Feng Nu didn't blame him, other things would be much easier to deal with. He wanted to say something, but Feng Nu continued, originally, I wanted to go with Ling, and Chen to the Ice God Pavilion to save Uncle and Auntie. I also helped you to fulfill your wish. Now that you are back, I can see that not only have you recovered your vitality, but your strength has also increased greatly. You can go with them. With Chenchen's familiarity with the Ice God Pavilion, she should be able to save them without me. There have been changes in the continent? What do you mean? Nian Bing asked. He held the 3 women's hands tightly at the same time. It wasn't easy to come back, and he really didn't want to be separated from the 3 women. Feng Nu looked up at Shi Bing and said, the changes were caused by Huarong Emperor Garden. Half a year after you left, the Huarong Empire launched a war against the Longmu Empire. However, this time, the enemy was not the Longmu Empire. It was the neighboring Qilu Empire. Under the leadership of your grandfather, Prince Rong, the Huarong Empire, with the Order of the Fire Dragon and the Order of the Flaming Lion as the core, suddenly launched a war against the Qilu Empire. In a short 3 months, not a single city or territory was lost. They directly attacked the Qilu Empire's capital, and with the arrival of the reinforcements, they captured the Qilu Empire's king and forced the Qilu Empire to submit. In another 3 months, the Qilu Empire was firmly under their control. They paid the smallest price to expand their territory by 2/5. They occupied a large area in the south. Hearing this news, Nian Bing couldn't help but be shocked. The Qilu Empire was one of the 5 great empires of the continent. Although it wasn't as strong as the Huarong Empire, nor was it as rich as the Longmu Empire, it was still one of the strongest empires. It was much stronger than the Ottoman Empire. However, it was actually destroyed by the Huarong Empire in just half a year. This news was truly enough to shake the entire continent. Shi Bing had only heard of the Order of the Fire Dragon before. He could faintly feel that the reason why the Huarong Empire was able to defeat the other 2 empires and take over the Qilu Empire was due to the sudden appearance of this powerful Night Order. Thinking of the Blood Lion sect's huge underground network, as well as the many years of operation of the Huarong Emperor's Garden, destroying the Qilu Empire wasn't too difficult. When it came to commanding a war, in the entire Yangon continent, there was no one who could compare to his grandfather. After pondering for a while, Nian Bing said, I'm afraid that Grandpa's plan for the war against the Qilu Empire was far-sighted. First, He used his elite troops to launch a surprise attack on the Longmu Empire, dealing a devastating blow to the Longmu Empire's elite knight. Furthermore, he plundered and burned the rich plains in the south of the Longmu Empire. Not only did he obtain a large amount of precious resources, he also temporarily paralyzed the Longmu Empire's production. The reason why grandfather didn't covet the Longmu Plains and consolidate his territory in the Longmu Empire was mainly because the Longmu Empire had a large amount of land and resources. They had been recuperating for many years, and their strength wasn't something that could be defeated in one blow. Once the other empires started a war with the Hwarong Empire, fighting on 2 or even 3 fronts, the Hwarong Empire would be caught in a dilemma. Therefore, grandfather only took a large amount of resources and scattered them back to his own empire. After this war, not only did the Hwarong Empire's prestige become a great deterrent to the other 3 empires, it also temporarily damaged the strength of the Longmu Empire, making them unable to invade the south. In that war, the losses of the Hwarong Empire were almost negligible. It could be said that it was an extremely successful war. The large amount of resources that were seized back made the Hwarong Empire unprecedentedly powerful. After some adjustments, they stationed a small number of troops near the border with the Longmu Plains. Relying on the natural defenses, they made the Longmu Empire not dare to make the slightest move. After that, they used the strength of the entire empire to launch a surprise attack on the Qilu Empire. Using the resources obtained from the Longmu Empire as the foundation, they succeeded in one fell swoop. Because of the previous war, the Ottoman Empire was unable to intervene. They were currently in a state of recuperation, and could only watch as this happened. It really was a perfect strategy. Feng Nu smiled slightly and praised. You weren't on the continent, but you saw it with your own eyes. It was indeed so. After the Qilu Empire fell into the hands of the Hwarong Empire, the Longmu Empire finally reacted. They mobilized their army and wanted to take advantage of the Hwarong Empire's internal defenses to launch a war. Unfortunately, Prince Rong led his 2 main cavalry forces back to the northern front as quickly as possible. Relying on the natural defenses, they once again defeated the Longmu Empire, causing them to be unable to take a single step forward. The initial fruits of victory were already set. Nian Bing looked at Feng Nu and said, I'm afraid you're worried about Mother's situation in the Ottoman Empire. What happened after that? What happened in the next 9 months? Could it be that the Hwarong Empire also launched an attack on the Ottoman Empire? That's impossible. After all, the Qilu Empire is a large country. The Hwarong Empire must have paid a heavy price to invade its territory. They also needed to consolidate their victory, so it would be difficult for them to launch another attack on the Ottoman Empire. Feng Nu smiled bitterly. You're really smart. That's right, I'm worried about Mother. Your predictions were all correct, but you still underestimated your grandfather and Emperor Huatian. When your grandfather launched an attack on the Qilu Empire, the Hwarong Empire's Prime Minister Su Yu had already led a diplomatic mission to the Ottoman Empire. He wanted to convince the Ottoman Empire to submit to the Hwarong Empire. It was because of this diplomatic mission that the Ottoman Empire, who should have been helping the Qilu Empire, lost their best chance. When the Qilu Empire was destroyed, the Hwarong Empire's Eastern Army and Northeastern Army each sent half of their forces to guard the border. The Ottoman Empire no longer had any chance. Although I don't know what exactly happened, that Prime Minister Su Yu was very powerful. I'm afraid he wasn't any weaker than your grandfather. Right now, the 2 empires are in the midst of negotiations. The Hwarong Empire has offered generous conditions for Åland to submit to them, allowing the Ottoman Empire to be autonomous. The only condition is that they have to submit to the Hwarong Empire and pay tribute every year. Nian Bing's eyes flashed. The Ottoman Empire won't agree to it, right? You have to know, if the Ottoman Empire submitted to the Hwarong Empire, then... The Hwarong Empire could use the Ottoman Empire's geographical advantage to attack the isolated Langben Empire at any time. The natural mountain range between the two empires would no longer be of any use. As long as the ruler of the Longmu Empire isn't an idiot, he definitely wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. Feng Nu nodded. That's right. When the Longmu Empire's attack on the Hwarong Empire failed, they immediately sent a powerful envoy to the Ottoman Empire to lobby. According to Xuejing's information, the three empires are currently in negotiations. Nian Bing thought for a moment, then said, "The Longmu Empire probably wants to use their economic strength to support the Ottoman Empire, intending to form an alliance. This is the only way to prevent the Hwarong Empire from invading the north. Now, it's up to the Ottoman Empire to decide. The Hwarong Empire isn't afraid of Shuryen after all, they have obtained the Qilu Empire's territory. The longer they drag things out, the more advantageous it is for them. As long as they use the resources they have obtained to reorganize their army, with my grandfather's command, in the near future, even if Holland and Longmu work together, they probably won't be able to stop the Hwarong Empire's attack. Grandfather, it seems like you really want to unify the entire continent in your lifetime." Feng Nu said, "Originally, when you didn't come back, I couldn't have placed my thoughts on other things. But now that you're back, Mother needs help. With Chen Chen and Ling accompanying you, I can rest assured. Since young, I haven't been able to be filial to my parents, so I want to go to Alin City to do my part." Lan Chen suddenly said, "Sister, I'll go back with you." Feng Nu looked at his sister with a gentle gaze, then shook his head and said, "No, you don't have to go back with me. Nian Bing needs your help to go to the Ice God camp, only you are familiar with the situation there. In fact, how can the two of us influence the political situation? I'm just doing my best. You should know better than me what kind of person Father is. I'm afraid that no matter what happens to the Ottoman Empire, he won't leave. Nian Bing, I know you're from the Hwarong Empire. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you." Nian Bing's eyes flashed. Seeing the reluctance in the Wind Girl's eyes, he suddenly laughed. "Silly girl, how can I let you go back by yourself? Since you're going, then let's go together. They're not just your parents, they're also my parents. As for my biological father and daughter, ever since Chen Chen told me that they're together, I'm no longer worried. I believe that they'll forgive me for saving them a little later. I know my father very well. As long as he can be with my mother, he's willing to do anything no matter where." Feng Nu's body trembled slightly. Looking at the smiling Nian Bing, her heart started to burn. How could she be willing to leave Nian Bing, who had just returned? Hearing Nian Bing's words, she could feel his deep feelings. Nian Bing held the three girls' hands tightly and said, "Intelligence is our priority. We don't have to rush to the Ottoman Empire. Even if we go there, we'll be in the dark. Only by grasping the current situation can we make the best decision. So, I want to go to Ice Moon City first and find out about the current situation in the continent. Yen Feng is my good brother. I think he's not having a good time right now. With the situation in the continent so chaotic, it's hard for the Ice Moon Empire to stay out of it. I want to hear his opinion." He hadn't been to the Blood Lion cult for a year and a half. With the Blood Lion cult's intelligence network, he could clearly know what was happening in the continent. He could also better understand the current situation and make decisions. Nian Bing's heart was very conflicted. On one side was his grandfather and family, while on the other side was his godmother, Feng Nu and Lan Chen's mother. Moreover, there was also Yen Feng. Since the Hwarong Empire had already started a war, then, according to the current situation, the flames of war would spread to the Ice Moon Empire one day. He always felt a bit guilty towards Yen Feng and wanted to find a chance to help him. And now it was the best time. Feng Nu let out a sigh of relief. Lan Chen also secretly let out a sigh of relief. She really didn't want to face her master, although she knew that there would be a day when she would. But now, she was more willing to choose to escape. As for Long Ling, seeing Nian Bing again, no matter what Nian Bing wanted to do, she wouldn't have any objections. Nian Bing, good brother, you're finally back. The excited voice shook the stone walls of the cave. This familiar voice made Nian Bing's heart warm. He stood up and shouted, "Big brother Garamandes, I'm here." Chapter 185. A red figure passed through the passageway like a flame, and a familiar face appeared in front of her. Nian Bing's eyes were moist. Fire Dragon King Garamandes was still the same as before, and his dragon eyes revealed strong emotions. Among the 7 Dragon Kings, Garamandes was the one who had the deepest relationship with Nian Bing. It was this Fire Dragon King who gradually led Nian Bing into the ranks of the strong. The brotherhood between them could no longer be expressed with words. Sizing up Nian Bing, Garamandes grabbed her shoulders with both hands and laughed, saying, Good brother, you're indeed back. Not bad, looks like you've completely recovered. My dad is really something, to be able to bring you back to life like that." Nian Bing smiled and said, "Big brother, how have you been these days? You and Xuejing." Garamandes puffed out his chest and said, "Do you still need to ask? Your big brother is so handsome and suave, and Jing has long been mine. She can't wait to have a good husband like me. But you're still good, getting 3 in one go. Who do you think can't wait, Amidst a delicate snort, a graceful figure walked in with large strides, directly to Garamandes's side, and grabbed his ear. Her gaze fell on Nian Bing, and it was Xuejing. Garamandes cried out in pain, I can't wait. Miss, be gentler, although my dragon ears are very sturdy, I can't stand it if you pull them every day." Although he was crying out in pain, it was obviously faked, and there was a hint of sweetness in his eyes. Even Xuejing, who was pulling his ear, had a smile on her face. Obviously, this was something that happened often. Nian Bing giggled and said, "Xuejing, I haven't seen you for more than a year, and you're still the same." Xuejing snorted in annoyance and said, "You still know to come back. You made our Ling and 2 sisters so sad. I really want to beat you up. Garamandes, fix him for me." She knew that she couldn't beat Nian Bing. Garamandes smiled bitterly and said, "I can't beat 4 of them by myself. It's not like you don't know how fast Feng Nu and the others have improved. If I were to make a move on Nian Bing, I'm afraid that the first one to come would be your good sister. Nian Bing, you came back at the right time. Right now, the Yangon continent is in chaos." Hearing the first half of his words, Long Ling and the other 2 girls couldn't help but blush. At the same time, they looked at Nian Bing. At this moment, they only had eyes for their loved ones. Nian Bing nodded and said, "I've already heard from Feng Nu. I didn't expect that more than a year had passed. There were so many changes in the continent. Oh right, Xuejing, how's the God of Cookery tournament?" Nian Bing felt extremely regretful that she couldn't participate in this year's God of Cookery tournament. At this time, more than a year had passed, and the results were definitely out. Xuejing sighed softly and said, "What else can it be? Since you're not here, Uncle Ming naturally went to battle. However, Uncle Ming and his junior sister teamed up, but they didn't even get a place. Right now, the cooking world is at its peak. Experts from all over the world are gathering, and it's too difficult to win the title of God of Cookery. In the cooking world, this year's God of Cookery tournament is hailed as the most valuable tournament after the retirement of the 5 great divine chefs. It's a pity that I couldn't go. I really wanted to see that scene." Nian Bing's eyes shone brightly. "If I'm not wrong, the final champion should be someone called Little Tian. At the very least, he should be in the top 3. Xuejing said in surprise, "You even know this? Didn't you just come back?" "That's right, it's that person called Little Tian. I heard from Uncle Ming that this Little Tian is extremely strong. Uncle Ming said that even you might not be able to win against him. His culinary skills are too miraculous. Even the 2 people who are his assistants are top-notch chefs. The 3 of them teamed up and defeated the other heroes in the end, becoming the champion of this year's tournament." Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, "That's within my expectations. I've fought Little Tian once before, and we were evenly matched. With his yin-yang harmony Tai Chi hand, which is the top of the 7 great forbidden hands, if he still couldn't become the champion, I would find it strange." Yin-yang harmony Tai Chi hand. Yes, that's it. Moreover, his first assistant is also very strong. That person called Momo or something. The two of them cooperated perfectly and didn't give the other contestants any chance. They almost became the champion of all the events. Sigh, it's a pity that you weren't here. Otherwise, we would have a chance to fight against them. Nian Bing was shocked. Momo is Little Tian's assistant? How is that possible? Back then, during the Hualong Culinary Challenge, Momo was a super chef who was second only to him and Little Tian. She was actually willing to be Little Tian's assistant. This was something that Nian Bing didn't expect. Xuejing said, "What's there not to know? That's their business. Nian Bing, I don't care. There are still 3 years before the next God of Cookery tournament. At that time, you must put down everything you're doing and compete for our clear wind fasting. No matter what, you must get first place so that we can hold our heads high." However, Little Tian didn't seem very excited about becoming the champion. Uncle Ming said that Little Tian mentioned an opponent who didn't participate in the competition at the end of his speech. That was the opponent he wanted to see. Could it be that he was talking about you? Nian Bing's eyes flashed. Little Tian, are you really waiting for me? I've disappointed you this time. However, I think that the next time will be when we decide the winner. 3 years' time was enough for him to deal with everything. Thinking of this, he nodded resolutely and said, "Xuejing, even if you didn't say it, I would definitely fight with him once. Let's see if his yin-yang harmony and Tai Chi hands are stronger or if my overall strength is stronger." The increase in his magic power had greatly increased Nian Bing's comprehension in all aspects. When one's culinary skills reached his level, there was no need to practice too much. Comprehension in one's heart was the key. Xuejing's simple words had already filled his heart with fighting spirit. Although it wasn't time to fight yet, he already saw Little Tian as his strongest culinary opponent. The stronger his opponent was, the more excited Nian Bing was. Only by continuously surpassing his opponent and himself could his culinary skills become more perfect. Xuejing said, "That's good. As long as you're willing to participate in the tournament for us, we'll forget about the matter of leaving for more than a year. Treat our Ling well in the future." Nian Bing smiled and said, "I will." Xuejing, you just came back from the Ice Moon Empire. Have there been any changes in the continent? Do you know how the negotiations with the Ottoman Empire are going? How will the Ottoman Empire decide? Xuejing shook her head and said, "I'm not too sure. I've never cared about politics. We run a hotel. No matter how turbulent the continent is, people still have to eat. What does politics have to do with us?" At this point, her expression suddenly changed as if she thought of something. "Oh, right. There's something I should tell you. Right now, not only is the Ottoman Empire's situation not good, the Ice Moon Empire's situation isn't very good either. Your good brother Yen Feng is very vexed right now. That's because he received an invitation from the Huarong Empire. They invited the Ice Moon Empire to send an envoy to the Huarong Empire to participate in some 4 nations public assembly." Nian Bing frowned and said, 4 nations public assembly? What's that? What does the Huarong Empire want to do? Xuejing shook her head and said, "I'm not too sure about that. However, this public assembly seems to have been proposed by the Huarong Empire and the Longmu Empire. Before I came back, I seem to have seen an envoy from the Longmu Empire come to the Ice Moon Empire and pass by Ice Snow City. They should be going to Ice Moon City. I really don't know what they want to do. The Ice Moon Empire is only at the average level among the countries. Because of the Ice Goddess Priest, they have become a powerful country. However, ever since Yen Feng inherited the throne, the Ice God Tower's attitude towards the Ice Moon Empire seemed to be somewhat cold. They didn't even send any experts to protect Yen Feng. The situation now is very delicate. I'm afraid only your brother knows the specifics. Yen Bing nodded and looked at Feng Nu and the other two girls. She said, "Looks like my choice was correct. Then let's go to Ice Moon City first. No matter what the public assembly of the four nations is going to discuss, before the assembly ends, the Ottoman Empire won't easily promise anything. Perhaps we can directly see Mother and the others in the Huarong Empire." Feng Nu nodded and said, "Everything will be arranged by you. We'll listen to you." Garamandes looked at Nianbing. At this time, Xuejing had already let him go. "Brother, you just came back and you're already in a hurry to leave? Why don't you stay a few more days to accompany us?" Nianbing smiled bitterly. "Right now, the continent is in turmoil. My grandfather, Feng Nu, and Qinchen's parents are all involved in this struggle. Although we may not be able to do much, we should at least try our best. At the very least, we have to ensure the safety of our loved ones. I don't want to see a bad situation. Otherwise, how can I be at ease?" He was indeed somewhat conflicted in his heart, but the conflict wasn't very strong. This time, the biggest difference between him and before was that his confidence had greatly increased. Not only because of his increased strength, but also because of the evolution of his Tian Yen acupoint. It allowed him to have a clearer control of the general situation. With his and Feng Nu's combined strength, it was definitely a terrifying small group. Although it might not be able to influence the political situation, Nian Bing was confident that he could deal with it. The results would depend on their efforts. Moreover, as the leader of the Blood Lion sect, Nian Bing had the largest underground force. This was one of the reasons why he was so confident in himself. Right now, the situation wasn't very clear. There were still many things that could be done. Right now, he only hoped that there wouldn't be any changes in the Blood Lion sect after not returning for more than a year. Garamandes smiled and said, "Then you can go. Whenever you want to come back, we'll all be here waiting for you." "Nian Bing, do you still remember those people who snatched Miorda's bottle of sealing?" A cold light flashed in Nian Bing's eyes and she said, "Yes, of course I remember. Those people left a deep impression on me." Evil Moon's figure flashed in her mind. At that time, she had almost lost her life in front of these experts of the dark forces. How could she not remember? Garamandes said, "In about half a year, it will be the day of extreme een that Lord Dragon God mentioned. Such a good opportunity is hard to come by in 100 years. I think those dark forces will never let go of this opportunity. They will definitely find a way to open the seal of Miorda's bottle of sealing. At that time, I hope you can stop them with us." There was a trace of hesitation in Nian Bing's eyes. She sighed and said, "Is it really right to stop them? Is the continent of gods really the domain of gods? I've been there before, and I know that it should be called hell. Brother Garamandes, it's not that I don't want to help you, but with the strength of Evil Moon's group, it's impossible for them to compete with the 7 Dragon Kings. What's more, as far as I know, the continent of gods will also send gods to help you." Garamandes said in surprise, "You don't want to participate? Have you forgotten how Evil Moon's group hurt you?" Nian Bing shook her head and said, "No, of course I won't forget. I don't have a good impression of Evil Moon's group. But my attitude towards the Lost Continent is different. Perhaps I think that the Lost Continent should return, and it will be better for our world." Garamandes looked at Nian Bing with some confusion. Nian Bing also looked at him. After a long while, Garamandes sighed and said, "Since you don't want to go, I won't force you. You can do as you see fit. The Lost Continent can't return. Otherwise, it will bring great turmoil to our world. No one can predict what will happen in advance. So, we must try our best to stop Miordas from opening the bottle of seal." Nian Bing was actually very hesitant. If it was for Halogen, of course she was willing to let the Lost Continent return. Even if it was for the Yangon continent, she was willing to let the lost continent return. After all, compared with the continent of gods, the lost empire seemed to be much stronger. However, her worry came from Evil Moon. Evil Moon's group was extremely evil. If they really followed the incantation and surrendered to Evil Moon after the return of the lost empire, she was afraid that the destruction to the human world would be no less than that of the continent of gods. At that time, a catastrophe would be inevitable. So, she was now hesitant and didn't know what she should do. Therefore, she rejected Garamandes's proposal. Everything would be decided by God. Who knew what God's will was? What she needed to do was to finish all the things she needed to deal with first. Feng Nu held Nian Bing's hand and looked at Garamandes, who was a little unhappy. Nian Bing looked back at her. He naturally understood what Feng Nu meant. Without Garamandes, there would be no Nian Bing today. This kindness must be repaid. Thinking of this, Nian Bing took a deep breath and said, "Big brother, don't be angry with me. You also came from the continent of gods. You should know more about the things there than I do. How about this? Although I may not help you, I may not be there when the time comes. If something happens that threatens you, I will not shirk my responsibility." Garamandes laughed and said, "Good, that's my good brother. Actually, I understand what you mean. The 7 Dragon Kings are willing to stay in the Yangon continent not only because there is a good life here, but also because we don't want to deal with those gods. Those guys make me sick just looking at them. However, the lost continent has disappeared for tens of thousands of years. Who knows how they have developed? If they have developed to the point where the continent of gods can't catch up, I'm afraid our world will face a huge disaster. So, the less trouble the better. Since the gods' emissary war from 10,000 years ago was already decided, why should there be any more variables? Alright, I won't disturb your little reunion. Silence, let's go out." After saying this, he looked deeply at Nian Bing and pulled Xue Qing out of the cave. Looking at their backs, Nian Bing fell into deep thought. Garamandes's words had his reasons. Yes, no one could predict what the lost continent would be like when they returned. 10,000 years ago, they were already able to defeat the continent of God. If it wasn't for the 3 true gods, there would be no gods in the world. After 10,000 years of reproduction, who knew what happened to the lost continent? If there really were a few true gods, just the impact of their battle on the various continents would be. Thinking about this, Nian Bing felt relieved. At least, he no longer felt that Garamandes's idea was wrong. It was still the same feeling. Let nature take its course. These things didn't have much to do with him. What he needed to do was to protect his friends and family. That was enough for him. Thinking about this, he pulled the 3 women in front of him and hugged them into his broad arms. Feeling the beauty of fullness, he sighed inwardly. It was so good to be alive. Nian Bing only stayed in the cold mountain range for one day. Early the next morning, he took Halogen and the 3 women to bid farewell to the 7 Dragon Kings. Originally, Xuejing also wanted to leave with them, but Garamandes let her stay on the grounds that he couldn't protect Xuejing. The day of extreme Een was approaching. The 7 Dragon Kings should also begin their final preparations. At this time, Garamandes couldn't leave casually. Wind, gently blowing the clouds in the sky, Nian Bing's eyes revealed a trace of gentleness. The air was a little cold. As the northernmost empire of the continent, this had always been the symbol of the Ice Moon Empire. This clean cold naturally didn't affect them. At this time, the mood of the 5 people was in a state of excitement. The 3 women finally waited for Nian Bing to return. No matter what difficulties they were about to face, they believed that as long as they were together with Nian Bing, nothing would be an obstacle. The most excited was Halogen. He had just arrived at this beautiful continent. It brought him a completely new feeling. At this time, with the help of Nian Bing's wind magic, flying in the air, looking at the blue sky, feeling the warm sunlight and the calm air, he really understood his mother's painstaking efforts. Yes, At that time, his mother chose to die for him. From the perspective of the dwarf race, this was definitely the right choice. It turned out that there really was such a beautiful place in the world. In this place, everything he came in contact with only existed in legends. To be able to feel all of this beauty, it could be said that it was a gift from his mother. Only by walking out of the cage of the gods' continent could he see this wonderful world. Slowly flying, Nian Bing pulled Long Ling's hand. Among the three women, Long Ling's strength was slightly weaker. Although Halogen was strong, he didn't have the ability to fly. Feng Nu and Lan Chen followed behind them, spreading their red and blue wings. They always hoped that their beloved could be in front of them. After flying together for a day, when night gradually fell, the 5 people finally arrived near Ice Moon City. Nian Bing led the other 4 people and landed on a small hill. "Brother Halogen, there are some things I need to tell you in advance." Nian Bing patted Halogen's shoulder. Halogen smiled honestly and said, "Brother, if there's something you need to say, just say it." Nian Bing said, "We're about to enter a human city. Your height is about 1.4 meters, which is quite eye-catching among human males. Moreover, there are many new things in the human world that you haven't seen before. I hope that no matter what you see, you can keep calm and try not to attract other people's attention, okay?" Halogen nodded and said, "I understand what you mean, but other things are easy, but with my height, I'm afraid." Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, "That's not a difficult task. I have a way." After saying that, his eyes flashed, and his right hand lightly waved forward. Light flickered, and an earth puppet that looked exactly the same as him appeared in front of him. After the 7 blades evolved into super divine tools, the earth puppets also had a solid form like Emperor Kurobut's. Nian Bing thought for a moment, and communicated with the earth puppet through her soul. The earth puppet's originally lifeless eyes became a bit more spirited. Nian Bing nodded. Nian Bing said to Halogen, "Brother, relax, I'll let the earth puppet fuse with your body. This way you can change your appearance. Don't resist, it won't affect your battle strength, it will only change your appearance." Halogen nodded and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Come on. Brother Nian Bing, your magic is really amazing." Nian Bing smiled faintly. Although he was able to do this because of the power of the 7 divine blades, his spiritual power was more important. Only when his spiritual power reached his level could he truly control the 7 divine weapons. Yellow rays of light condensed around the body of the earth puppet. With a flash of light, the melody of Earth Awakens appeared in Nian Bing's hand. The yellow rays of light lost their original shape, and gradually condensed into a ball, floating in front of Halogen. Halogen's dwarf divine armor shook, and issued a slight buzzing sound. Halogen smiled faintly, and used his mind to communicate with his precious armor. He relaxed his whole body, and let the pure earth element baptize his body. The yellow rays of light gradually surrounded Halogen's robust body, and the rays of light gradually shone. Halogen clearly felt that the earth element in the air was unceasingly condensing towards him, and fusing with his body. At this time, Feng Nu and the other 2 saw a strange scene. Under the cover of the yellow rays of light, Halogen's appearance was gradually becoming indistinguishable. The yellow rays of light were unceasingly fluctuating, and the shape was also constantly changing. Nian Bing closed her eyes, and the light between her eyebrows turned into a faint yellow. The longevity blade in her hand swallowed the light, and with a flash of light, she suddenly threw the longevity blade out. Under the influence of the yellow rays of light, the longevity blade floated and fused with Halogen's body. Under the constant movement of the earth element, a tall youth appeared in front of them. The yellow rays of light converged, and everything returned to normal. Halogen looked at his own body in astonishment. At this time, he didn't feel the slightest discomfort. He only felt that his body was full of the aura of the earth element. His tall body didn't seem to have changed at all. He still had the same control as before, but he found that his height was almost the same as Nian Bing's. Nian Bing looked at Halogen with satisfaction. Halogen's appearance hadn't changed much. Under the influence of the earth element, an earth element barrier was formed around Halogen's body, and the earth element completely fused with his body under the influence of the longevity blade. The dwarf divine armor couldn't be seen from the outside. Halogen's current appearance was like his original self had suddenly grown 2 feet taller. He looked tall and mighty, and his muscles were still as swollen as before. There wasn't the slightest bit of disharmony. Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, "It's a success. Big brother Halogen, you don't feel any discomfort, right?" Halogen constantly looked at each part of his body. He was surprised to find that not only was his body rebuilt, even the warrior's robe on the surface was condensed from the earth element. On his back, a rich earth element energy was constantly absorbing the earth element in the air, maintaining the appearance of his body, as if it would never change. This is too amazing. So magic is so fun. It's a pity that I can't learn it anymore. Otherwise, I would have asked you to teach me a little. After changing his appearance, Halogen became even more excited. Now that he had transformed into a real human, he was indescribably happy. Nian Bing smiled and said, "Your current body is actually just a layer of earth element added on top of your original body. And this body is the core of the longevity blade's energy. With the longevity blade's speed of absorbing the earth element in the air, as long as you are willing, you can maintain this appearance without changing. Alright, now we can enter the city. Big brother, you have to remember what I said earlier." Halogen smiled and said, "Don't worry. In terms of experience, I'm not as knowledgeable as you, but in terms of age, you're much younger than me. Naturally, I know what to do and what not to do." The 5 of them stopped flying and walked together on the official road from the hill, heading towards Ice Moon City. Ice Moon City, as one of the most famous cities in the continent, had not changed much. The security at the city gate was still as strict as before. The changes that happened more than a year ago in the Ice Moon Empire seemed to have never happened. Everything was on the right track. Without any obstructions, the 5 of them entered the city. Because Feng Nu and the other two's appearances were too outstanding, Nian Bing purposely made them change into coarse clothes and put on bamboo hats to cover their beauty. Nian Bing also had some selfish motives. Just like any other ordinary man, he also hoped that the beauty of his beloved would only shine in front of him. After entering Ice Moon City, the fake Wu Ji brought the 4 of them to eat a simple meal and then went directly to the Warriors Guild. He first had to contact the Blood Lion cult. With a huge intelligence network, it would be much easier to do anything. The Golden Magician's robe was very eye-catching. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the Warriors Guild, they attracted the attention of the guards. The guards here were all from the Blood Lion cult, but the low-level members did not recognize Nian Bing. 2 warriors directly stopped them. "What are you doing here? After all, magicians rarely appeared here." Nian Bing said indifferently, "Take me to see Yin Tao." The warrior snorted and said, "You want to see our president? Who are you?" Nian Bing looked at the 2 warriors and a strange light flashed in his eyes. The 2 warriors only felt dizzy and their minds became blurred. Although they had also been trained by the Blood Lion cult and their willpower was much stronger than ordinary people, in front of Nian Bing's spiritual power, there was no way for them to struggle. "Take me to see Yin Tao." Nian Bing repeated his words again. This time, the guards only responded in a low voice and quickly led them into the Warriors Guild. As soon as they entered, a familiar scene greeted their eyes. It was still chaotic here. In the spacious hall, the warriors were all receiving various missions or coming here to submit missions. Nian Bing ignored the gazes around him, and did not care that his golden magician's robe had become the center of attention in the hall. Under the guidance of the 2 warriors, the 5 of them directly walked to the back. After passing through the door, Nian Bing ordered the 2 warriors to return to their post. He stopped and his spiritual power spread out like ripples in water. In an instant, it covered the entire warriors' guild. Standing in the same place, he said in silence, "Yin Tao, come out and see me." His voice was not loud. Halogen was a little curious about who Nian Bing was talking to. However, the hearts of Long Ling and the other two who were practicing magic trembled at the same time. Nian Bing's voice seemed to come from the depths of their souls. It shocked them. The three of them had all opened their Tian Yen acupoints and were much more familiar with spiritual power than before. Feeling Nian Bing's endless spiritual power, they could not help but be a little shocked. Nian Bing did not tell them what happened on the godly continent, but their strength had greatly increased and they could clearly feel that Nian Bing was unfathomable. Yin Tao was handling some of the daily affairs of the guild. As for Nian Bing's voice, Long Ling and the other two could only sense it with their spiritual power. However, to Yin Tao, Nian Bing's voice was like a bolt from the blue. It shook his brain and made him dizzy. In shock, he immediately identified the source of the voice and quickly walked out of the room. When Yin Tao saw Nian Bing in a golden magician's robe, he was relieved. His eyes were filled with surprise. He walked a few steps in front of Nian Bing and knelt on one knee. He said respectfully, "Master, please forgive me for being late to greet you." Since Feng Nu and the others were present, he did not rashly call out the two words, "leader." Chapter 186. Sensing the surprised looks of Long Ling and the other two girls, Nian Bing said, "Stand up, let's talk inside." Yin Tu nodded sincerely, then stood up and led Nian Bing and the other four girls into the meeting room. Closing the door, Yin Tu walked to Nian Bing, stood beside him with his hands hanging down, glanced at Feng Nu and the other four girls, and asked in a low voice, "Master, who are they?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "It's all right, they're all on the same side. Master Yin, long time no see. How is the Ice Moon Hall?" Yin Tu gave a bitter smile and said, "Master, you're finally back. During the past year, so many big things have happened on the continent. We've sent a great number of people to search for you, but we didn't get any information. How did you?" Nian Bing raised his hand and stopped Yin Tu from continuing. Everyone sat down and Nian Bing took the main seat. He glanced at Feng Nu, Long Ling and Lan Chun, hinting that he would explain to them later, then said to Yin Tu, "Something happened to me. I rushed back as soon as I finished dealing with it." Yin Tu said, "Master, it's great that you're back. We need you to take charge of the situation." Nian Bing nodded and said, "Tell me briefly what happened in the sect during my absence." Yin Tu said respectfully, "Not long after you disappeared, we received a call for help from the former master. Because you weren't here, the 7 elders didn't dare to make any decisions without permission. Therefore, they sent people everywhere to search for you. Our sect has eyes and ears all over the continent, but we couldn't find you. The 7 elders were afraid of delaying the important things, so they temporarily took charge of the sect affairs and decided to help Devil Lion." Nian Bing nodded and said, "So, the sect had a hand in what happened in the Qi Lu Empire as well?" Yin Tu said, "Yes, the purpose of our sect was to serve the Rong family. We secretly provided all kinds of information about the Qi Lu Empire to Lord Devil Lion. Even the capital city of the Qi Lu Empire was broken into. It was the 7 elders who led the red-clothed men of sacrifice to open the city gate from the inside. That's why everything went so smoothly. Right now, most of our people are concentrated in the south." Nian Bing thought to herself. Sure enough, although she wasn't here, the 7 elders would never be careless when it came to important decisions. With the comprehensive information gathered by the Blood Lion cult and the surprise attack, how could the Qi Lu Empire not be defeated? Seeing that Nian Bing was deep in thought, Yin Tu continued, "Sect Master, since you've returned, why don't you leave now? In that case, I will immediately inform the elders and ask you to preside over the situation." Nian Bing said, "All right. Inform the elders that I'm back first." "Oh right. What's with the 4 states forum space? I've only heard about it. Since the Huarong Empire has organized such a meeting, they must be up to something. Dang nodded and said, "Yes, I also just got the news not long ago. The so-called Four Nations Conference is actually very simple. It is a peace talk proposed by the Huarong Empire." Nian Bing was moved. Peace talks? Under such circumstances, the Huarong Empire is actually willing to negotiate. What a good plan! However, will the Longmu Empire allow the peace talks to succeed? Now that the Qi Lu Empire has been conquered, they need time to fully control it. The Huarong Empire's territory is already about the same size as the Ottoman Empire and the Ice Moon Empire combined. It is at least 1.5 times the size of the Longmu Empire. Then, how can the other empires compete with the Huarong Empire? Dang said, "The situation of the Four Nations Conference is very delicate. According to the information I received, in the upcoming conference, the Huarong Empire and the Longmu Empire will naturally be at odds with each other. The Ottoman Empire and the Ice Moon Empire are in a more delicate position. The Huarong Empire needs time to recuperate. However, the Åland Empire needs more time to adjust. The Ice Moon Empire just had a change of emperor not too long ago. Although most of the powers are under our control, their national strength isn't that strong. Furthermore, due to the distance between them and the Huarong Empire, if I were Yen Feng, I definitely wouldn't offend the Huarong Empire so easily. I would attract a great enemy to myself." Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, "Not bad, your analysis is very reasonable. Presumably, this should be the reason why the Huarong Empire started the peace talks. Tension and relaxation, it is indeed a good strategy. Judging from the current situation of the Ice Moon Empire, we don't even need to occupy it. The entire upper echelon of the empire is under our control." Dang nodded and said, "That's right. After what happened last time, the reserve elder Xuepu is already the father-in-law of the Ice Moon Empire. He is also in charge of more than 1/3 of the empire's military power. After the elders of the Blood Lion Hall discussed it, Xuepu is now in the back seat. He is only in charge of the military power, but he will not easily interfere with the government. He will fully support Yen Feng and let him control the Ice Moon Empire on the surface." Nian Bing's eyes flashed. She smiled and said, "This is the best choice. Since ancient times, powerful officials have never had a good ending. For us, the most important thing is the military power of the sorcerers. As long as we have the military power, there is no harm in letting Yen Feng manage the politics. Moreover, the Ice Moon Empire's government has already been infiltrated by our people. No matter what happens, it will be under our control. I will go and take a look at the Four Nations Conference. I can't predict the result. If I am not wrong, the Huarong Empire wants to show its strength in front of the other three nations to deter them. The Longmu Empire wants to contact the other two nations to resist the Huarong Empire together. It is time for the nations to compete with each other. Whoever can gain more benefits from this conference will be able to live more comfortably in the future." Dang said, "Hierarch, what should we do?" Nian Bing thought for a while and said, "When you inform the 7th Elder that I am coming back, tell them to lead the elites of our sect to wait for me in the Huarong Empire. I will be there soon. At the same time, tell the branches of our sect to not act rashly. Also, tell them to restrain their intelligence network. We must maintain the mystery of our sect, especially in the Huarong Empire." Dang stared blankly and said, "Hierarch, why? Now is the best time for us to expand greatly." Nian Bing said indifferently, "Just do as I say. I have my reasons." The increase of the Huarong Empire's power was naturally a good thing for the empire. However, it might not be so for the Rong family. After all, the Rong family was a subject of the Huarong Empire. Their achievements might not cause the Emperor Hua Tian to offend them. However, in the future, the throne might change or Prince Rong might die. In that case, the Rong family might not be as glorious as it was now. It might even change. After all, the military power of the Rong family was too great. Just the two terrifying night regiments were enough to make anyone wary. Therefore, the more mysterious the Blood Lion sect was, the more help it would be to the Rong family in the future. How could Nian Bing tell Yin Dang this? Because Yin Dang was not a member of the Rong family, nor was he a core member of the Blood Lion sect. Nian Bing continued, "Help me arrange a place for my friends to stay. I'm going out for a while." "All right," Nian Bing said. Yin Dang nodded. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. "Xiang," Nianbing said, "the recent actions of the Aland Empire have been very strange. According to the reports of our spies, for some reason, the Aland Empire has undergone tremendous changes in the past 2 years. This is especially so with the encouragement of the royal family. Various industries have developed greatly, and the entire country seems to be thriving. The country has issued dozens of decrees, and not a single one of them is wrong. Under the country's impoverished condition, they have greatly reduced taxes and encouraged production, although it has only been 2 years. However, the Ottoman Empire has fully recovered and is now far from what it used to be. However, they did not expand their army. The army is still under the control of Duke Bluefeather. They even gave up the defense of the barren lands in the south and retreated inland. Apart from the daily necessary training, the soldiers are engaged in other work. For example, assisting farmers in farming. It is very strange. However, the effect is surprisingly good. The whole country is adjusting and developing. Although there are not many changes on the outside, the Ottoman Empire is very different from before." Nian Bing's heart moved. For such a situation to occur, it must be related to the leadership. Only an enlightened monarch and wise ministers can make the weakest country on the continent develop in such a short time. Have there been any changes in the upper echelons of the Ottoman Empire in the past 2 years? Yin Dang nodded. Yes, and there was a very big change. Under the recommendation of Duke Bluefeather, a person called Noel became the new Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire. It was because of this person's ascension that the Ottoman Empire made great progress. Noel? Nian Bing's mind spun quickly. A faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. I believe that this Prime Minister Noel is not only very young, but also a woman. Yin Dang was surprised. How did you know? This Prime Minister Noel reports directly to the Emperor of the Ottoman Empire in the Aland Palace. She almost never appears in front of the monarch and his ministers. The decrees are also issued by the Emperor. We used a lot of manpower to investigate that this Noel is a woman, but you, Nian Bing looked at Long Ling with a smile. It seems that your good sister has begun to show off in the Ottoman Empire. Long Ling looked at Nian Bing in surprise. Are you saying that this Noel is Ro-er? Nian Bing nodded. That's right. Other than the Lady of Wisdom, I can't think of anyone else who has the ability to make the Ottoman Empire change so much in such a short time. Yes, although the Emperor of the Ottoman Empire may not be very wise, he definitely knows how to use people. No wonder Duke Bluefeather was always placed in an important position by him. This time, with Luo Ro, 1 civil and 1 military, if they are given some time, I believe that the Ottoman Empire will achieve great things in the future. Feng Nu, you don't have to worry now. With the Lady of Wisdom in the Ottoman Empire, it won't be easy for the Huarong Empire to swallow her. Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing confusedly. She really couldn't understand when the man she loved so much had become a politician. Looking at his calm face, it seemed that he already knew the situation in front of him. Nian Bing stood up and said to Yin Dang, "You go inform the elders as I said. I need to go out for a trip." Yin Dang nodded sincerely and walked out. Nian Bing looked at Halogen and the 3 girls, smiled and said, "Now I can answer your questions. Is there any problem? You can ask." Feng Nu was the first to speak. "What's with you being a leader? I've never heard you mention it before." Nian Bing smiled and said, "You will all be my wives. There's nothing to hide. Back then, do you still remember what happened when we participated in the competition in the Huarong Empire? I took over the position of the leader of the Blood Lion sect at that time. Then, he briefly explained how his grandfather had passed on the Blood Lion sect to him and how he had promised to protect the Rong family in the future. Hearing Nian Bing's words, Lan Chen suddenly said, no wonder you were in the palace that day when the Ice Moon Empire's royal family was in chaos. That Yen Feng could become the emperor, it must have been because of you. Nian Bing grinned and said, of course, even those powerful warriors who went to intercept your teacher were sent by me. If I hadn't controlled everything well, how could I have let that good brother of mine sit on the emperor's throne? In fact, the real reason I did this was because of Ling Er. Only when Yen Feng became the emperor, there would be no more obstacles between Ling Er and me. Back then, when I agreed to help my master Longji, I didn't have the slightest confidence. However, for Ling Er's sake, I had no choice but to agree. After that, when I discovered that the underground forces of the Blood Lion cult were actually so large, I finally had the confidence to succeed. In fact, it was very dangerous that time. Even if your teacher had arrived earlier, our plan would have been ruined. Fortunately, we succeeded in the end. That's my secret. You know everything else. Do you have any questions? Long Ling smiled and said, I don't have any questions. I don't care who you are or what your subordinates are in charge of. Anyway, I won't leave you in the future. Lan Chen sighed softly and said, Nianbing, I was really unwilling to admit defeat when we fought for the first time, and I've always been looking for an opportunity to defeat you. So, I've been constantly training bitterly while I was looking for you. I hoped that I would be able to take revenge when I saw you again. However, every time I saw you, you were stronger than before. You not only faced me but also so many things. I have to admit that you are much better than me. Nian Bing held Lan Chen's hand and smiled. If I'm not as good as you probably won't recognize me as your husband, right? Well, don't think too much about it. I will do my best to deal with your teacher's matter. She locked my parents up for so many years, destroyed my childhood, and destroyed my family. I have to take revenge. But after all, she also raised my mother and you. As long as my parents are safe and sound, I promise you that I will spare her life. Lan Chen's eyes lit up. Ignoring the other people around, he threw himself into Nian Bing's arms and said in a trembling voice, Are you telling the truth? Although she had decided to leave the Ice God Tower at that time, how could she forget the kindness of the Ice Goddess Priestess for raising her for so many years? The thing she was most afraid of was going to the Ice God Tower with Nian Bing one day. She wasn't afraid of facing her teacher, but she was afraid that if a conflict broke out between her beloved man and her teacher, either side would be hurt. Nian Bing obviously understood her heart. Making such a promise to her could be considered as the biggest concession he could make. After all, in Nian Bing's heart, hatred had always been the source of his continuous efforts. The reason why he said so was entirely because of her. Thinking of this, Lan Chen's heart surged with strong emotions. She hugged Nian Bing's neck and used her ice-cold lips to kiss Nian Bing's lip. Nian Bing had been here for 2 days, but when the 3 women were with him, they were too embarrassed to be too intimate with him. They were all afraid that the other 2 women would misunderstand. Lan Chen's sudden kiss startled Nian Bing, but his surprise was soon replaced by tenderness. He hugged Lan Chen tightly and kissed her deeply on the lips. Don't worry, I never go back on my words. Since I've already promised you, I will definitely do it. Lan Chen's eyes reddened. She lowered her head and said, Thank you for understanding my heart. Nian Bing hugged her elastic body tightly. Recalling the madness of that time, he couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. He smiled and said, Well, don't think too much. You are my lover, I should do something for you. What's more, this is not a big deal. After going to the continent of gods, Nian Bing's knowledge had greatly increased. In the past, when he was in the Yangon continent, he always thought that God's Descent Master was the ultimate goal he pursued. But after going to the continent of gods, he discovered that his pursuit was so shallow. In the future, there were still many tests to face. Those few true gods should be the ones he should face. Lan Chen's heart gradually calmed down in Nian Bing's warm embrace. Only then did she remember her current situation. She hurriedly broke free from Nian Bing's embrace. A blush appeared on her fair face. She stole a glance at her sister, then looked at Long Ling, and Feng Nu's expression didn't change. They were both looking at her with a smile. Lan Chen's gaze just happened to meet Lan Chen's. This made Lan Chen even more embarrassed. Nian Bing laughed and said, "What are you looking at them for? Don't worry, I won't favor one and discriminate against the other. Come, my two wives, let's kiss." After saying that, he made threatening gestures and pounced on Feng Nu and Long Ling. The two women cried out in alarm and hurriedly hid behind Lan Chen. But Nian Bing's physical strength was no longer comparable to before. Feng Nu smoothly dodged, but Long Ling fell into his evil clutches. Long Ling only made a symbolic struggle before Nian Bing succeeded. Different from Lan Chen's cool lips, Long Ling's lips were extremely moist and soft. It was exceptionally comfortable to kiss. When Nian Bing went to grab Feng Nu again, Feng Nu said shyly, "Didn't you say you were going out to do something? Why haven't you gone yet? You're fooling around in front of Big Brother Halogen. What are you doing?" Halogen was originally looking at them foolishly. Hearing Feng Nu's words, he quickly turned around and muttered, "I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything." Nian Bing suddenly stepped forward like lightning and deeply kissed Feng Nu's hot lip. "Okay, I'm done kissing. You wait for me here, I'll be back in a while." After that, Feng Nu snorted and hurriedly ran out of the meeting room. Looking at Nian Bing's back, Feng Nu couldn't help but shake her head helplessly, but her heart was very sweet. She had spent the longest time with Nian Bing. She clearly found that since Nian Bing came back, his mentality had changed a lot. At least, he was no longer as dark as before and had become much more cheerful. Perhaps it was because he had regained his life, and at the same time, because he knew that his parents were safe and sound. Nian Bing left the Warriors' Union, tidied up his clothes, and slowly walked towards the palace. Before seeing Yin and I, he had guessed that the Blood Lion Church had helped the Huarong Empire launch an invasion. Therefore, Yin Ni's words didn't surprise him too much. As he walked, he thought about the current situation of the Yangon continent. No matter how the Yangon continent fought, it didn't affect Nian Bing too much. He just hoped that his family and friends wouldn't be hurt. As for who ruled the continent, it didn't matter too much. What he was thinking about the most now was the lost continent. In his mind, he often analyzed what would happen if the lost continent returned, or if the process of opening the seal was stopped. After staying with Cao for a year, the unlucky emissaries sent by the godly continent might have already come to the Yangon continent. He didn't know if they had found the whereabouts of Evil Moon. These emissaries had seen so many complicated scenes on the Yangon continent. If they went back to the godly continent and spread the news, it was very likely that the binding seal of the godly continent would be opened in the future. Although they were all humans, it was definitely not a good thing for so many strong people to come to the Yangon continent one by one. But was it something that he could stop? Nian Bing's good mood gradually disappeared as he thought about it. He felt more and more that the situation was serious. Cao and Tianxiang had both entered meditation when he left, and the other three true gods definitely wouldn't be idle either. No one could predict what would happen in the future. If he wanted to change all of this, he needed more power and influence. It seemed that he had to make some preparations on the Yangon continent. No matter how strong the gods were, they were far from being comparable to the Yangon continent in terms of numbers. When he arrived at the Huarong Empire, he should talk to his grandpa. He hoped that he could come up with a solution as soon as possible. While thinking, Nian Bing arrived at the gate of the Ice Moon Empire's palace. As soon as he arrived, he suddenly felt a cold breath invading his body. He was shocked and couldn't help but raise his head to look in the direction of the breath. He saw 3 magicians wearing white magic robes looking at him. These 3 people were also coming to the Ice Moon Empire's palace. Seeing them, Nian Bing's heart beat violently. The one in the lead wearing a thin veil was the priestess of the Ice Goddess. At this time, the priestess of the Ice Goddess was dressed the same as before, but there was an additional white bamboo hat on her head. The 3-feet-long veil hung in front of her, covering her peerless beauty. The 2 people behind her were dressed the same as the priestess of the Ice Goddess, but their breath was much weaker. Although he couldn't see the priestess' appearance, with Nian Bing's spiritual power, he could see through her. In an instant, he determined that the person in front of him was his greatest enemy. Taking a deep breath, his eyes lit up and he took the initiative to greet him. The reason why the priestess of the Ice Goddess was able to discover Nian Bing first and not Nian Bing was not because her spiritual power was stronger than Nian Bing's, but because Nian Bing was a little absent-minded when he was thinking and didn't pay attention to the movements around him. Seeing Nian Bing walking towards her, the priestess of the Ice Goddess couldn't help but be a little surprised. When Lan Chen was still Bingyun, he once told her about Nian Bing's identity. Right now, looking at Nian Bing's somewhat familiar handsome face, she couldn't help but think of her own disciple, and also that stubborn Rongtian. From the surface, this young man wearing a golden magic robe in front of her was more outstanding than his father. But the strange thing was, he was clearly a magician. But why didn't she feel any magic elements around her body? What wind blew Lord Ice Goddess Priestess to Ice Moon City? Royal Court Magician Nian Bing greets you. Nian Bing's voice was very calm. Although his mood was agitated, but ever since he went through countless trials, his spiritual power had already reached a whole new realm. He definitely wouldn't let his inner thoughts affect the change of his aura. The priestess of the Ice Goddess said coldly, "You're Nian Bing. Rong Nian Bing?" Nian Bing's eyes flashed and said, "Since you already know, why do you need to ask?" The priestess of the Ice Goddess nodded. She said, "You've got guts. You actually dare to talk to me like that." Nian Bing smiled slightly and said tit for tat, "We're all humans, we all have mouths. Other than eating, aren't mouths also used to talk? Could it be that your mouth can fart?" Although separated by a thin veil, once Nian Bing's voice fell, she could immediately feel 2 exceptionally cold gazes shooting out from behind the white veil. "You think I don't dare to kill you here?" The priestess of the Ice Goddess's voice became even colder. "You dare. Of course you dare. As the only God's Descent master in the continent, is there anything you don't dare to do? However, if I remember correctly, all the supplies of the Ice God Tower seem to be provided by the Ice Moon Empire. No matter what, I'm under the orders of the Ice Moon Empire's royal family. In front of the palace, if Lord Priestess kills me, I'm afraid it won't have a good effect." The priestess of the Ice Goddess snorted coldly. She said, "Your father isn't as glib as you, at least he's still a gentleman." Hearing the priestess of the Ice Goddess mention his father, Nian Bing's eyes couldn't help but shine. He said coldly, "Gentleman? Since you think my father is a gentleman, why do you still want to harm him and my mother? You should understand that the hatred between us can't be resolved. Rest assured, I won't run away. The matter between us will be resolved one day, just not now. If you want to get back the stone of the Ice Goddess, it'll depend on your ability." 2 rays of cold light instantly shot out from the hands of the 2 magicians behind the priestess of the Ice Goddess, aiming straight for Nian Bing's vital points on his chest. As disciples of the Ice God Tower, hearing Nian Bing insult the priestess of the Ice Goddess, they didn't have the self-restraint of the priestess of the Ice Goddess, and immediately couldn't help but attack Nian Bing. Nian Bing smiled indifferently, not the slightest bit flustered by the opponent's attack. He didn't even move, letting those 2 highly condensed ice cones pierce his body. He didn't even use magic to resist. His chest shone faintly, and the 2 ice cones turned into ice powder. Looking at the 2 holes left on his golden magician's robe, Nian Bing said indifferently, "Lady Priestess, I think you should compensate me with a new robe. The priestess of the ice goddess was also very surprised. The two ice magicians who came with her to Ice Snow City this time had been her subordinates for many years, and their strength had reached the level of an ice magus. Although the ice cones were instantaneous, it wasn't something that an ordinary ice magician could do. However, Nian Bing didn't even use magic, and blocked the attack with just the strength of his body. What was going on? Could it be that he also practiced martial arts at the same time? Because she couldn't sense Nian Bing's aura in her heart, the water seal became mysterious. Nian Bing looked deeply at the priestess of the ice goddess. It wasn't that he didn't want to make a move immediately, and it wasn't that he didn't have confidence in himself. However, since he had already promised Feng knew that he would deal with the Ottoman Empire first, now was definitely not the time to complicate matters. Moreover, the priestess of the ice goddess had always been the symbol of the Ice Moon Empire. If he rashly made a move against her, it would be difficult to explain to Yen Feng. Why aren't you saying anything, priestess? You're in the wrong. Since we're already here, then let's go in. You should also be here to see His Majesty. After saying this, Nian Bing no longer paid any attention to the priestess of the ice goddess and turned to walk towards the palace. Priestess, he's so arrogant. What do you think? An ice magus beside the priestess whispered. The priestess of the ice goddess said indifferently, now is not the time to make a move. You must remember that as an ice archmage, you must remain calm when facing an enemy. Only in this way can you find the enemy's weak point and strike. Your magic is already very strong. Haven't your tempers been smoothed out after so many years of cultivation? The two ice magi said in fear, yes, priestess. The priestess of the ice goddess walked towards the palace. Let's go in as well. With the gold medal that Yen Feng had given her, Nian Bing didn't encounter any resistance and directly entered the palace. At this time, Yen Feng was currently in court. He had come to the Ice Moon Empire's Ice Goddess Palace and ordered a messenger to report inside. Yen Feng was currently in court with the ministers of the Ice Moon Empire to discuss the matter of the Four Kingdoms Conference. Ever since he received the invitation from the Huarong Empire, he had been in a difficult situation. He had been the emperor for a while now and had gradually adapted to his current life. His own talents were gradually showing, and he sat firmly on the throne. However, this matter was truly too troublesome. He didn't want to offend the Huarong Empire, but at the same time, he didn't want to offend the Longmu Empire. Right now, the envoys of both empires were in Ice Moon City.